Chapter 1009. And these two fox demons were the only two that the Dragon King declared to be soaked in the underworld realm's black water until the end of all living things. Li Zhong did not know what the end of all living things was, but as the human king of the northern frontier, he knew very well. All living things in the world had a cycle of reincarnation. Even if the cycle of reincarnation did not manifest, it did not mean that it did not exist. It was like a seed sprouting into a towering tree, and after the tree died, it would gradually decay into nutrients and return to the land. Unless this cycle of reincarnation was broken, all living things would not welcome the end. So the Dragon King's words, when translated into the common language of the Tianwu continent, meant, "I will soak you in the underworld river until the end of the world." How many years would it take for the world to be destroyed? Li Zhong did not know. But he knew that unless he could become an existence stronger than God's, as the Dragon King said, he would never see that day come. The souls of the two fox demons wailed and turned into pitch-black color. As Lin Yuan's demonic power loosened, they fell to the ground with two ticks, turning into 2 drops of pitch-black liquid, and then melted on the ground. In the time that I was not in the northern frontier, you did well. Keep up the good work. As his voice fell, Lin Yuan's figure moved and disappeared from Li Zhong's sight. After 2 breaths, Lin Yuan appeared on the peak of a mountain. 200 youths wearing the same black clothes silently looked at Lin Yuan, who had suddenly appeared. Their eyes were gradually filled with fanaticism. To the creatures of the northern frontier, even if Lin Yuan did not call himself a god, there would still be people who would regard him as a supreme god. This was because Lin Yuan's appearance had undoubtedly changed the fates of many people. Those who should have been high and mighty had fallen into the dust. Those who should have died without a name had the chance to leave a mark in this world. And now, these youths, whose average age was only 12 or 13, and the oldest had just turned 16, had become Lin Yuan's gods chosen. In this cruel world, most children matured early. Even if they were only 12 or 13 years old, they knew that their fates would completely change from this moment onwards. If there were no accidents in the future, they would all become incomparably powerful cultivators. First of all, I would like to congratulate all of you for standing out from the countless creatures of the northern frontier. From now on, you are this king's disciples, cultivating the immortal techniques that this king personally passed down. Unless you fall from an accident, in the near future, any one of you will be able to do something that can shake the Sky Martial continent with a stomp of your feet. Lin Yuan coiled his flood dragon body together in midair. His voice was not loud, but it was accurately transmitted to the ears of every teenager. What did it mean to be the Dragon King's disciple? The Northern Frontier's star-class generals were also Dragon King's disciples. Although they had formed a general Blackwater army, their average strength was in the Heaven Star realm. If they were placed in the Northern Frontier and Southern Expedition armies, they would at least be captains leading 2,000 soldiers. However, they would rather stay in the Blackwater army and be an officer. This was because as the Dragon King's personal army, the status, treatment, and even future of the Blackwater army soldiers were incomparable to other armies. Even if they no longer continued to serve in the Blackwater army, if they were placed in any army in the Northern Frontier, they would still receive the treatment of a general. They could even be promoted to the Ministry of War and become a new noble in the Northern Frontier's imperial court. And now, they had also become the Dragon King's disciples. The biggest difference between them and the Star-class generals was that the Star-class generals were only the Dragon King's disciples in name. In reality, their lessons were still handled by the various teaching institutes in the Northern Frontier Academy. However, they were personally taught by the Dragon King and were truly the Dragon King's disciples. This was not an exaggeration at all. Then I still have to congratulate all of you. This is because the techniques that this king imparts will be extremely compatible with your body's aptitude. Furthermore, the higher the limit of this world, the higher the realm you will be able to cultivate to. There won't be a situation where after cultivating to a certain realm, you will lose the subsequent cultivation techniques and be unable to progress for the rest of your life. Lin Yuan spoke again. This time, a look of surprise appeared in the eyes of most of the youths. As the top geniuses selected from countless creatures in the northern frontier, most of them were humans, but there were also some demi-humans. Because they were now isolated from the Hungduan Mountains, no young demonic beasts were selected. However, from another perspective, to be able to give birth to outstanding offspring, the parents must also be powerful cultivators. To put it in a more scientific way, one could not expect the union of two mortals with no aptitude for cultivation to give birth to an offspring with extraordinary aptitude for cultivation. That kind of genetic mutation was extremely rare. Therefore, these youths were no strangers to cultivation. It could even be said that they had been taught by their families. After all, at this age, if they were born in a mortal family, it would be impossible to test their aptitude for cultivation, and they would not know how to build a foundation for their children. Therefore, after cultivating to a certain realm, these youths were actually not unfamiliar with the cases where their cultivation techniques could not keep up with their aptitude. In particular, some of the youths were from the Red Dust Society. The Red Dust Taoist was a living example. How precious was a cultivation technique that was extremely compatible with one's characteristics and had no upper limit for cultivation. Once this news was released, there was no need to verify whether it was true or false. It would set off a reign of terror in the cultivation world. Therefore, while these precocious youths were secretly delighted, they also secretly made plans to keep their mouths shut. Even if someone close to them asked what cultivation technique the Dragon King had taught them, they would definitely not reveal the slightest bit. Because if the slightest bit of this matter was leaked out, it would be a disaster that no one could bear. In the end, you are all lucky, but also unlucky. Lin Yuan raised his head to look at the dome of the sky. After receiving the system's affirmation, he said in a deep voice, "Because from today onwards, you will receive the best cultivation techniques and the greatest amount of resources. However, at the same time, you will become enemies in the eyes of the world's consciousness. All the opportunities will not be fated with you. But if you want to obtain them, you will have to put in 100 times more effort than ordinary people. You will have to experience 100 times more dangerous battles than ordinary people. Other than the dangers that exist in the sky martial world itself. When your cultivation is sufficient, this king will also send you to various worlds to seek opportunities and experience." At this point, he paused, and a ferocious smile gradually appeared on his face. "So, from today onwards, danger and accidents will always be by your side. Survive and stand at the peak of this world. Even the will of the world will have to bow down to you. Or die in another world, and even your bones won't be able to be recovered." As his voice fell, the universal scripture was activated. Countless scriptures appeared, arranged in different combinations, and poured into the minds of these youths, forming a brand new cultivation technique that was incomparably suitable for them. Chapter 10:10. If the system had done something against the will of the world before it knew Lin Yuan, it would not hesitate to send down the punishment of heaven and turn this arrogant person who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth into ashes. But it had no choice. Lin Yuan gave it. No, Lin Yuan's picture was too tempting. Not everyone was qualified to know some secrets of the untainted land. But as the way of heaven in the untainted land, it knew more secrets than Hongjun. 9 was the limit in the world, especially for the way of heaven. So at the very beginning, there should be 9 sages of heaven. Although Hongjun had achieved the origin, he was also a sage of heaven after combining with the way of heaven. Not long after, Hongjun completely grasped the authority of the way of heaven and was conferred the title of Sage of Heaven. They were Sanqing, Goddess Nviwa, and Western Shur, who were known as the 6 sages. As for the remaining 2 sages, Hongjun naturally did not hold them in his hands, but used them for other purposes. The 3 sovereigns of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors shared a sage position. Later, the 3 sovereigns were schemed by Hongjun and could never leave the Fire Cloud Cave. The human tribe was undoubtedly the protagonist of the untainted land. Since there was the way of heaven, there must be the human tribe. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were supposed to be human tribe sages. However, they were schemed by Hongjun and shared a sage position of heavenly way. Naturally, they could not become human tribe sages again. Then, because they shared a sage position of heavenly way, their individual strength was only at the peak of sage to be. They were more powerful than Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals, but they had not reached the level where they could kill Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals as if they were dogs, let alone compete with the 6 sages of heaven or Hongjun. The 5 emperors after the 3 sovereigns did not have as much merit as the 3 sovereigns. Under the scheme of Hongjun, it could be said that one of them died. Of course, in addition to the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, if the human king was born and gathered the fate of the human tribe, he could also become the sage of the human tribe. Thus, the human tribe and the way of heaven could compete with each other. Therefore, Hongjun planned another god's investiture tribulation. Although all parties had their own plans, Hongjun did not stop those creatures from escaping. His basic purpose was to set off the god's investiture tribulation without any hindrance. Therefore, in the investiture of the god's tribulation, the Jie sect, which was known as the 10,000 Immortals Court, was destroyed, and so was the Shang dynasty. After King Zhou, there were no more human kings in the human world. The so-called Emperor of Zhou was just a puppet that was casually supported by the heavenly Tao. Even until 800 years later, when the fate of the great Zhou dynasty was exhausted, the Warring States period became the Spring and Autumn period. During the Warring States period, the Qin Emperor swept the world. However, the most unexpected thing was that Ing Zheng did not consider himself the Emperor of Zhou. He called himself the first emperor and gathered the titles of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors on himself. This showed that Ing Zheng did not want to be the lackey of the way of heaven and wanted to establish the human king again. From the 6th emperor of the great Qin dynasty unified the world. When Ing Zheng was on the throne, he built the Great Wall, wrote the same books, ran the same rails, strictly enforced the law, and ruled the world. He was also worthy of the title of the Emperor of the Ages. In order to resist the way of heaven, he even burned the cultivation classics and killed the alchemists in the world. When he succeeded the throne, he even began to build a mausoleum for himself and cast the terracotta army. Even after his death, he would turn into a dragon soul to protect the human tribe. Therefore, he was called the Ancestral Dragon. Of course, the result was that the 2nd emperor of the Qin dynasty died. A ruffian who came later, because he called himself the Emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, established the Han Dynasty with a history of more than 400 years. Another ambitious person with great talent and bold vision died, but he was still scolded as a tyrant. What kind of irony was this? It was true that the later generations called themselves the Han Dynasty, but everything of the Great Han Dynasty was taken over from the Qin Dynasty. The only difference from the Qin dynasty was that the Confucian school was abolished and the Confucian school was respected. The dynasties of the later generations also used history to prove that when the Confucian school was strong to a certain extent, it would lead to the destruction of the dynasty. And those great people who tried to reform the Confucian school to continue the life of the dynasty died miserably. In short, under the design of Hongjun, the decline of the human tribe was a foregone conclusion. However, it also indirectly confirmed the means of Hongjun, who could suppress the protagonist of the world, the human tribe. The 6 sages, Hongjun, and the 3 emperors, these were the 8 sages of the way of heaven. The remaining sage was Empress Pingxin. Yes, Empress Pingxin, whose primordial spirit was trapped in the cycle of reincarnation and couldn't come out, was actually the 9th sage of the way of heaven. Hongjun's purpose was also clear. After all, Empress Pingxin's reincarnation was a great merit. If Empress Pingxin could use this merit to go further, she could draw out the underworld that could compete with the way of heaven, especially the 6 paths of reincarnation. The way of heaven was a part of the way of heaven, and the human way was a part of the human way. The way of Azura was the predecessor of the way of devil, the way of hell was the predecessor of the way of ghost, and the way of beast could also evolve into the way of demon. Otherwise, Empress Pingxin, who controlled the 6 paths of reincarnation, wouldn't have been able to ignore the way of heaven Hongjun and use the netherworld to protect the remnants of the witch tribe. Of course, if the underworld wasn't too strong, it wouldn't have attracted the covetous eyes of so many big shots. En, son of heaven Huang Feihu, belonged to the celestial court. Lord of Mount Tai belonged to the celestial sect, and Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva belonged to the Western sect. Similarly, the Tao of Tao should also have 9 sages. The Emperor of Fengdu was 1. The Taoist masters of the 6 paths of reincarnation were 6. The ghost emperors of 5 directions shared 1, and the Yama kings shared 1. As for Empress Pingxin, she was different from Hongjun. If she really took that step, she would become the Tao of Tao itself. Unlike Hongjun, who merged with the heavenly Tao and stole the heavenly Tao's authority. Hongjun took out 2 sages of heavenly Tao and directly suppressed the appearance of the human Tao and the Tao of Tao. The reason why he killed the king of man and built the heavenly court during the deification period was to completely suppress the human Tao and to take away a part of the Tao's authority. During the journey to the west after the deification period, there was a reason why Hongjun flourished the Western sect. After all, Sanqing teamed up with him during the deification period, so this tribulation was the tribulation of the Xianmen. In addition, after flourishing, the Western sect also took away a considerable part of the Tao's authority. Otherwise, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva wouldn't have made the great vow that he wouldn't become a Buddha until hell was empty. With the body of a creature in the untainted land, he suppressed Sanqing, who was transformed by Pan Gu's primordial spirit, controlled all the creatures in the untainted land, merged with the heavenly Tao, stole the authority, and suppressed the appearance of the human Tao and the Tao of Tao with his own means. Even as the heavenly Tao whose authority had been stolen, it had to admit that sometimes it had to admire Hongjun's power. In these countless years, it had been an enemy of Hongjun, but in the end, it was disappointed again and again. Even it did not know when this disappointment would turn into despair. Therefore, when Lin Yuan mentioned Hongjun's death tribulation, it couldn't help but be moved. That was why it helped Lin Yuan to practice the all-being scripture, which was considered a taboo in the eyes of all existences like the heavenly Tao. Chapter 10:11. Half an hour later, only Lin Yuan and Kagura were left on the mountain peak. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said, "A total of 217 youths have been personally taught by me. After 3 months, these youths that I sent to other worlds will return. You will be in charge of their food, clothing, housing, and other resources. As for the number of youths, just maintain this number for now. The rest of the youths with potential will be nurtured as reserves." The youths who had learned the Sutra of all life were sent by the system to other worlds to train. After all, there would not be any war in the northern frontier for the time being. Even if there was a war, it would not be something that these youths could participate in. It was better to send them to other worlds to train. Although the system was a scam, it was very reliable when it was serious. These youths who had learned the Sutra of all life were essentially the envy of the heavens. They were destined to be plagued with misfortune. After all, once the Sutra of all life was mastered, Lin Yuan would become an existence equal to the rules. Therefore, other than Lin Yuan, the seeds of the Sutra of all life would also be affected. However, with the system's protection, even if these seeds were to go to other worlds, they would only be small worlds or middle worlds. Unless they went to a special world like the Tianwu world, the chances of them being killed by the heavenly Tao was close to 0. Although the system was only a fragment of the heavenly Tao's original essence, strictly speaking, the Eldritch world was a unique existence in the myriad worlds. Apart from the Eldritch world, even the greater worlds could not produce 3,000 carriers of the rules. Furthermore, the main characters of other worlds were mostly humans. However, the Eldritch world had experienced the rule of the ancient demon god, the dragon, the phoenix, the Kirin, the liches, and other races. Not all heavenly Tao had the qualifications to be on par with the Eldritch world's heavenly Tao, even if it was only a fragment of its original essence. The influence of the rules could not be removed, but the possibility of it being killed prematurely did not exist either. Therefore, the 217 youths might be lost, but the number would not be too great. With the current talent pool at the northern frontier, it was completely possible to replenish them in time. I'll set a small goal first. In the heaven martial world, he had become an existence equivalent to the laws. Even if his cultivation base couldn't keep up, he was essentially on par with gods like Pangu and Yangmei. Adding on the support of the laws of the heaven martial world. Although he wasn't as domineering as Hongjun after merging with the heavenly Daos, his battle prowess definitely wouldn't be the slightest bit inferior. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan was so determined to kill the two fox demons, even though he knew that the patriarch of Yang Mei was behind them. Most of the time, Lin Yuan would make a lot of impulsive decisions under the influence of his inner demons. However, as his cultivation increased, Lin Yuan was gradually able to control his actions under the influence of his inner demons. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used this matter to set up a trap for the outer god from the Heavenspan realm. Then the next problem to be solved. Lin Yuan's gaze turned and fell in the direction of the Hengduan mountain range. Up until now, the ink abyss still showed no signs of waking up. Lin Yuan had also gone to visit, but he wasn't optimistic about the ink abyss's injuries. Frankly speaking, if not for the Kirin bloodline erupting in the ink abyss's body, it would have been impossible for it to fight against the outer god. Although the demon beasts and purgatory creatures in the Hengduan mountain range had jointly plotted against the ink abyss, it was the eruption of the Kirin bloodline in its body that saved its life at the critical moment. After all, it was an auspicious object destined by the heavens. Although it was rare, it wouldn't die so easily like during the first tribulation of the Dragon Han. However, although it wouldn't die, it was really hard to say whether it could wake up. If the ink abyss could rely on its own strength to wake up this time, its future achievements would be limitless. The great path that surpassed its ancestors might be directly placed in front of it. Otherwise, it would depend on how unwilling it was to combine with the bloodline power in its body. The more it resisted the power of the Kirin bloodline, the lower the possibility of waking up. That's good too. I want the Hengduan mountain range and the endless sea. If you wake up, I really don't know how to face you, the Beast Master. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed as he whispered softly. An hour later, due to the attack on Shunning City, the turmoil in the entire northern frontier had subsided. Even if there were still people who wanted to cause trouble in the dark, they had to think twice. After Lin Yuan, who had casually killed two demon kings and even pulled them out and sank them into the liquid called the underworld Blackwater, had the Dragon King's anger subsided? If they were to cause trouble at this time and were caught, it wouldn't be just one or two people who died. As the turmoil in the northern frontier subsided, more and more cultivators and demon beasts were free and headed towards Shunning City. Firstly, it was to pay homage to the return of the Dragon King. Secondly, it was because the Dragon King's real body had returned to the northern frontier and the northern frontier was in a mess. It was inevitable that he would be angry, so he would definitely make a big move. These clever and slick people naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. After all, if things were done well, not only would they be able to express their goodwill to the Dragon King, they might even be able to obtain a great fortune. In Lin Yuan's previous life, words like slick and slick were used as derogatory terms. After all, such people didn't have any standpoint. They would act high and mighty in front of those at the bottom and grovel in front of those at the top. Therefore, they were very detestable. However, in reality, being slick was also a kind of ability, especially in a place like the northern frontier. Having enough ability was the foundation to climb up. However, other than this foundation, it was also difficult for people who didn't have good relationships with others to move forward. The northern frontier wasn't a place where people would be shocked and put on a high pedestal just because some arrogant person said a few words. There were too many capable people in the northern frontier, especially those who had a certain amount of authority in the northern frontier. Each and every one of them was considered an outstanding person of their time. If they were placed in other dynasties, they wouldn't only have this little bit of authority. They could be promoted with a single thought. Under Lin Yuan's criteria of selecting talents with ability as the first priority, the Li brothers worked together and completely changed the promotion rules in the northern frontier to the capable go up, the mediocre step aside, the mediocre step down, and the weak are eliminated. In such an environment, it would be difficult for the mediocre to even survive, let alone be in a high position. There were many reasons why these heroes gathered here. However, The most important reason wasn't that they could fulfill their ambitions in the northern frontier. Instead, it was much more comfortable in the northern frontier, whether it was fighting, debating with other heroes, or working together with them, compared to other places where they had a good idea but couldn't move forward because of countless mediocre people. Chapter 10:12. When the curtain of night slowly fell. At the northern frontier king's mansion, we pay respects to the Dragon King, with Li Zhong and Li Xian at the head and familiar faces like Xia Siyu and Chen Guanshan standing on the left and right. They bowed and shouted at Lin Yuan, who was sitting on a cushion. Lin Yuan's gaze turned, and he said indifferently, "Zhao Guangchong, Qin Yu, you two lead the Black Water Army and search the mountains and seas. Thoroughly investigate the northern frontier. In 3 days, this king wants all the undyings, not one left alive." Just as Zhao Guangchong cupped his fists and was about to respond, Qin Yu took a step forward and said in a deep voice, reporting to the Dragon King, "It's not that this subordinate is a coward, but that we have yet to find a way to kill the immortals. If the Dragon King only wants this subordinate to find their existence, this subordinate will naturally comply. However, to kill all of them, this subordinate is afraid that this subordinate is unable to do so." As he said this, Zhao Guangchong's expression changed, because Lin Yuan had given him an impossible mission. "No matter," Lin Yuan said indifferently. "There is someone controlling these undyings, which is why they are so difficult to deal with. But this king has already set a trap to severely injure them. Even if they can survive, not to mention in such a short time, unless they can find a heavenly treasure, they will not be able to recover in 180 years. You and your subordinates will each bring the nether realm's black water. If you encounter any undyings, throw the container of the nether realm's black water at them." Although the nether river creatures had a certain degree of intelligence, they were only a part of the nether river. So the closer they were to Lin Yuan, the closer their intelligence was to that of when they were alive, and vice versa. Just like when Lin Yuan left the northern frontier, these nether river creatures that Lin Yuan had given to Li Zhong as trump cards did not contribute anything other than acting as a moat and ensuring the safety of some important cities. They could only follow the orders of Lin Yuan or those approved by Lin Yuan. So someone had to lead these nether river creatures. Otherwise, they would not be able to truly search the mountains and seas. But now was indeed the best opportunity to deal with the undyings. Lin Yuan was now almost certain that the so-called elixir of immortality came from the Nether Blood Sea in the untainted world. The Nether Blood Sea and the Nether River could not be compared, so it could only be seen who was controlling these two substances. But now, the outer god from the heavenly passage world had been tricked by Lin Yuan, and most of his primordial spirit had been cut off. Even if he did not die, he had to recuperate first. If he controlled these undyings to fight with Lin Yuan again, he would simply be tired of living. As for the real master of the Nether Blood Sea, a Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. No, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was not even a bodhisattva when he entered the nether world. At most, he was a venerable of the Buddhism sect. He was almost at the level of subduing dragon and subduing tiger. Relying on the prestige of the Western religious sect, he could directly suppress the Nether River ancestor, an old monster who was also born in the era after Pangu transformed into all things. From this point alone, it could be seen that although the Nether River ancestor had the great ambition of killing all living things to achieve Tao, he was essentially a person who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Who was outside the heaven martial world now? The Nether River ancestor Yang Mei. This figure, who was almost at the same time as Pangu and was not the slightest bit inferior to Hongjun after he merged with the heavenly Tao, was now outside the heaven martial world. Even if the Nether River ancestor had twice the courage, Lin Yuan would not dare to come to the heaven martial world. Although it was unknown how the Nether River ancestor came, there was no doubt that the Nether River ancestor Yang Mei had also divined that Hongjuan's death tribulation was about to appear in the heaven martial world and made the same judgment as Lin Yuan. However, compared to the Tongtian sect leader, who could transform into Sanqing, and Taoist Red Cloud, who did not hesitate to destroy his own physical body, the extremely powerful Nether River ancestor Yang Mei could not come to the heaven martial world and personally seize Hongjuan's death tribulation. After thinking about it carefully, there was an 80% chance that Hongjun was courting death. This person who suppressed the heavenly Tao, earthly Tao, and mortal Tao had offended countless people over the years. Now that his death tribulation had appeared, those who wanted to kill Hongjun would definitely not miss this opportunity. Therefore, Lin Yuan guessed that it was the consciousness of Hongjun that had attracted the attention of the Nether River ancestor Yang Mei in the Sea of Bitterness. At first, he probably just wanted to see what kind of world would provoke Hongjun to personally take action. As a greater world among the greater worlds, although Hongjun was weak in terms of the heavenly Tao, earthly Tao, and mortal Tao, his foundation was not weak at all. In the past countless years, he had conquered thousands of worlds and opened up the primal chaos Tao field. Perhaps it would be enough if he used the battle strength of the monkey, Yangjian, and Neza. Even if it was not enough, there was no reason that the other 5 sages could not take him down. Since when did he need Hongjun to personally take action? In the end, the Nether River ancestor Yang Mei took a look out of curiosity and saw that Hongjuan's death tribulation was about to arrive. In that case, I accept your orders. Qin Yu clasped his hands together and returned to his position. Li Zhongxing, Zhang Xiuzhu, the two of you are in charge of running the entire southern expedition and MI7. In the near future, this king will lead his troops south and unify the central plains and the southern regions of the Xinwu dynasty. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and continued. Although the person who was severely injured by me has nothing to do with the master behind the Sky Demon, there is most likely a powerful person guarding outside the Heaven Gate. Although this powerful person does not have a blood feud with the master of the Sky Demon, they're definitely not on good terms with each other. Therefore, with him around, the Sky Demon will be isolated and without help. It is best to take this opportunity to eliminate the Sky Demon. Go and make some preparations. When Zhao Guanchong and Qin Yu have completed their tasks, you will immediately set off. Li Zhongxing clasped his hands together and did not say anything. However, Zhang Xiuzhu's expression changed slightly. He frowned and said, "Dragon King, please reconsider this matter. When we were confronting the Sky Demon by the Wei River, the Xuanjin dynasty was already ready to make a move. They are probably waiting for an opportunity to take advantage of us and the Sky Demon in one fell swoop. Now, the Blackwater army is severely injured, and the main forces of the southern expedition are restrained by the Frost Mirror Rangers. Although the Fallen Star army is recruiting, they are also in the training phase. This is definitely not the best time to make a move." The Xuanjian dynasty. Li Zhongxing's expression darkened as he murmured with a cold look in his eyes. Originally, he thought that even though the various majestic empires wouldn't participate in the war against the heavenly demons, once the northern region, which had the ability to kill the heavenly demons, was defeated, they would probably immediately face a worse situation. Therefore, even if the various majestic empires didn't send troops to support the northern region, they would deploy troops to help the northern region intimidate the heavenly demons, just like the victorious army of the Azure River Empire. But these guys from the Xuanjin dynasty, they were like a pack of hungry wolves. They had suffered a great loss at the hands of the Sky Demon at the northern frontier. Now, not long after, their injuries had not healed, and they were ready to make a move again. It seemed like they wanted to rob the northern frontier and obtain all kinds of resources to make up for their losses. Chapter 10:13. This was more than absurd. This was simply absurd. Li Zhong's face darkened as he also cupped his hands and said, "This subordinate also thinks so." Now that the Xuanjin barbarian is eyeing the northern frontier covetously, the main force of the northern frontier is still there, and the Sky Demon has not continued to attack the northern frontier, so the Xuanjin barbarian does not dare to attack the northern frontier at this time. However, if the army of the northern frontier is sent out, I'm afraid it goes without saying what the Xuanjin barbarian will do. Zhang Xiuzhu and Li Zhong are both opposed to conquering the central plains and the south at this time. What about you? Do you have any other opinions? Lin Yuan did not directly answer Li Zhong and Zhang Xiuzhu. Instead, he turned his head and looked around as he asked in an indifferent tone, These people present were the real power class of the northern frontier, and each of them had their own plans. This time, they came to Shunning City in an attempt to curry favor with Lin Yuan. However, they did not expect that before there, but even warmed up, Lin Yuan would throw a huge problem to them. Continue to maintain the current strategy of shrinking back, wait for everything to be sorted out in the northern frontier, and then slowly plan to conquer the central plains and the south? Of course, this statement agreed with the two giants, Li Zhong and Zhang Xiuzhu. However, without a doubt, this view was tantamount to disrespecting the Dragon King, who proposed to lead the army to the south. But if they agreed with the Dragon King's view, then they would offend the king of the northern frontier and the director of MI7. If everything went well, it would be fine, but if the Xuanjin barbarian really took this opportunity to attack the northern frontier, who would end up well? Cough. I have a different view. Lei Qiuxing walked out of the crowd with his hands behind his back. He said in a deep voice, "First of all, if the Dragon King is right, then this is indeed the best time for us to eliminate the immortals and the Sky Demon. If we don't act now, when the Sky Demon is ready, or when that powerful person outside the Heaven Gate leaves, the price we will have to pay will definitely be much more painful than if the Xuanjin barbarian invades the northern frontier." As his voice fell, everyone nodded in agreement. None of the generals of the northern frontier were theoretical, especially those who could appear in front of Lin Yuan. They were basically people who had made a name for themselves after the establishment of the northern frontier. Perhaps not all of them were potential generals, but they were still clear about the basic analysis of the battle situation. Just like what Lei Qiuxing said, if you don't accept it, you will be punished. If they miss the opportunity now, it would be tantamount to missing the opportunity. In any military war in history, those who missed the opportunity would suffer heavy losses, or even be completely wiped out, unless they were extremely lucky. As the former Gemini of the 10,000 Swords dynasty, Lei Qiuxing, who had defeated the Duke of Baixing on land, could be said to have a thorough analysis of the battle situation and the future trend. They had personally experienced how terrifying the Sky Demon was when he was at his peak. The Blackwater army was almost completely wiped out, and Yin Xingqi died in battle. Other than Zhao Guanchong, who was thought to be doomed at that time, the rest of the people who had attacked the Sky Demon were all wiped out. Therefore, the actual combat strength of the Sky Demon was actually above that of the northern frontier. Now, they should take advantage of the fact that the Sky Demon had no reinforcements. Once the powerful person mentioned by the Dragon King left and the Sky Demon's reinforcements arrived, they would drag the northern frontier to death in a tug-of-war. And speaking of which, although the Xuanjin barbarian is eyeing the northern frontier covetously, they might not really dare to attack. Lei Qiuxing looked at Lin Yuan with burning eyes and said in a deep voice, just like when the Xinwu dynasty was still around, although the Frost Mirror barbarian attacked the pass every year, they never really dared to enter the territory of the Xinwu dynasty. Not to mention the Central Plains, they didn't even dare to enter the north. This is because these Xuanjin barbarian are used to bullying the weak and fearing the strong. They are like jackals in the wilderness, only having the guts to eat rotten meat. Now that the Dragon King is famous everywhere, I think that even if the Xuanjin barbarian had any intentions before, they would not dare to invade the northern frontier anymore. The Xuanjin dynasty did not dare to invade the Xinwu dynasty on a large scale, not only because the 7 dynasties had been passed down for many years, but more importantly, the Xinwu dynasty's Shen Lin Jun, as a heavy infantry, was indeed worthy of the title of invincible. It was also worthy of the various resources that Lei Qiuxing spent on him every year. Even if the Xuanjin dynasty's most elite Shui Liao cavalry went up against Shen Lin Jun, unless the difference in numbers between the two sides was too great, they would not be able to make Shen Lin Jun's position retreat even half a step. If the light cavalry did not rely on their mobility to move and insisted on chopping iron cans, what was the difference between that and seeking death? Unfortunately, this was the way of a war to destroy a country. You could only move forward, and forward. You could not let go of any enemy, especially Shen Lin Jun, who was an organized existence. Today, you chose to avoid them because you were no match for them. But in the future, They would become a thorn in your side, a thorn in your flesh, and make you suffer so much that you would rather die. Was there a Shunlin Jun in the northern frontier? No. The Shunlin Jun in Lei Qiuxing's hands had almost all been killed by Hamba. Even if there were some remaining, they would not be able to form an organized army to threaten the Xuanjin dynasty's cavalry. As for the Blackwater army, they had also suffered heavy losses when they fought against the Sky Demon. Although they could still fight, they were destined to fail without a miracle. However, the northern frontier had an advantage that the Xinwu dynasty did not have, and that was Lin Yuan. When Lin Yuan killed the 2 fox demons, he didn't have any intention of hiding it. Not to mention the big boss of the Heavenly Gate. Even if it was only a Heavenly Dipper realm and Kongming realm cultivator, as long as the distance was not too far, they could clearly see the battle. In other words, Lin Yuan was demonstrating his power. He was telling the world that he, Lin Yuan, had killed 2 theoretically invincible existences on the spot with an invincible momentum. On the other hand, as long as a powerful existence like Lin Yuan was in charge of the northern frontier, how many forces would have the guts to touch the dragon whiskers of the northern frontier? That group of Xuanjin barbarian who bullied the weak and feared the strong? Would they dare to provoke the northern frontier at this time? From a personal point of view, Lei Qiuxing felt that this possibility was close to zero. However, there was always a possibility, so he could not say for sure. However, it was not against the law to express his opinion, right? I admit that the time has come, but there are some things that we have to guard against. Therefore, I think that the Southern Expedition, which is currently in charge of the northern frontier, must not be mobilized. The other armies do not have enough ability to conquer the Central Plains and the South. Therefore, why don't we wait for a while and settle other things first? Li Zhong looked hatefully at Lei Qiuxing and said in a deep voice. He was clear about his Dragon King's temperament. Although the Dragon King would listen to his subordinates' suggestions, he was still an overbearing monarch. If he made a decision, he would definitely not change it unless all his subordinates opposed this decision. Seeing that he was about to persuade Lin Yuan, Lei Qiuxing suddenly jumped out and interfered. Li Zhong even had the intention to kill. Chapter 10:14. There are some things that we have to guard against. However, compared to hiding in the dark and plotting against each other, the conclusion we come to might not be correct. It might even be just your own baseless conjecture. Therefore, why don't we ask the Xuanjin dynasty directly? Lei Qiuxing's eyes flashed. He said in a low voice, "The Southern Expedition will officially cross the border between the northern frontier and the Frost Mirror grassland if they are still determined to attack the northern frontier. At that time, if the Xuanjin barbarian is still determined to wait for an opportunity to attack the northern frontier, their first reaction will definitely be to mobilize their army and directly start a war with us. However, if the Xuanjin barbarian contacts us immediately, it means that the Xuanjin barbarian is indeed frightened by the Dragon King's battle record of killing the 2 demon kings. At that time, the Southern Expedition can set their minds at ease and head south to fight with the Sky Demon." Li Zhong was so angry that his whole body trembled. He roared, "You are not probing. You are inviting a war. Have you ever thought that if the Xuanjin barbarian really starts a war with us, the main force of the Southern Expedition will definitely be delayed in the Frost Mirror grassland? Firstly, the terrain is not favorable for us. Secondly, when our rear is empty, it will no longer be us plotting to conquer the Central Plains and the South. It will be the Sky Demon who will be thinking about how to take advantage of this opportunity to completely turn our northern frontier into a wasteland." Both sides had their own arguments. Everyone present was at a loss of what to do. The northern frontier was undoubtedly in an awkward situation. Once the Southern Expedition entered the Xuanjin dynasty's territory, a war would definitely break out. Even if the Xuanjin dynasty didn't dare start a large-scale war, it wouldn't be a problem for them to allow the smaller tribes to attack the Southern Expedition. After all, the Xuanjin dynasty was different from the other dynasties. The royal family's ability to control the other tribes was shockingly low. Therefore, this reason made sense. If the northern frontier didn't let go, then it would mean that the northern frontier wanted to start a war with the Xuanjin dynasty. Naturally, the nature of the situation would be different. Most importantly, although the current southern expedition was able to contain the Frost Mirror barbarian forces, they had to rely on the Great Wall built at the northern border. If they really left the protection of the Great Wall and went to the Frost Mirror grassland to fight the barbarian cavalry, they would be courting death. After all, a war of extermination was different from a war of defense. Not to mention that the southern expedition didn't have a heavy infantry corps like the Shun Lin Jun and the Blackwater Army. Even if they did, it wouldn't change the situation. If the battlefield was on the Frost Mirror grassland, the Frost Mirror barbarian forces would definitely not fight the Northern Frontier Army head-on. They would focus on the mobility of their cavalry and wander around the main forces of the Northern Frontier. They would constantly kill the main forces of the Northern Frontier, including but not limited to the scouts, supply teams, and civilian workers. They would all die under the Frost Mirror barbarian scimitars. After that, the Frost Mirror barbarian forces would only need to slowly delay the main forces of the Northern Frontier and wait for them to run out of ammunition and food. The Shinwu dynasty's countless wars with the Xuanjin dynasty had proven this point. When the Frost Mirror barbarian raided the borders, if they encountered solid city defenses and elite Shinwu border army, they would definitely collapse. However, once the Shinwu dynasty's army entered the Frost Mirror grassland, it would be merciful to be killed by the scimitars. However, no matter what Li Zhong and Lei Qiuxing said, the Northern Frontier still acted according to Lin Yuan's will. In other words, when Lin Yuan said that he wanted to use this opportunity to recover the Central Plains, the South, and completely eliminate the Sky Demon, the entire Northern Frontier would act on this basis. The current argument was just that the timing wasn't good. However, from the opinions of these two people, it was indeed in line with their personalities. Lei Qiuxing, who was born in the military, had not changed his belligerent nature even though he had been an emperor for several decades. Li Zhong, on the other hand, was different. She was more like a kind and gentle old mother. When she faced her child in the northern region, she would always take care of everything and handle everything in an orderly manner, not giving anyone a chance to take advantage of her. One wanted to take the risk and reap the greatest rewards. The other wanted to make sure that he was in an invincible position even if he had to delay the battle. In reality, neither of them were wrong. It was just that their ideals were different. However, with Li Zhong's personality, when Lei Qiuxing was on the throne, he wouldn't be put in an important position. Even if he climbed to the top, he would only be able to become a prefectural governor in the Central Plains. From the beginning until now, I've always felt that you two seem to have overlooked two things. Li Zhongxing's eyes narrowed slightly. He opened his mouth and interrupted the confrontation between Li Zhong and Lei Qiuxing. He said in a deep voice, "First, whether the Xuanjin dynasty wants to go to war with the Northern Frontier doesn't need to be discussed. Because whether they are afraid of the Dragon King or not, once the Northern Frontier shows signs of weakness, they will definitely take advantage of the situation. This is the nature of the Xuanjin barbarian. Therefore, we don't need to probe and don't need to worry about it. Isn't it fine if we attack from another angle and make the Frost Mirror barbarian too busy to take care of himself?" At this point, he paused. His eyes turned, and he said indifferently, "The second thing is that the Dragon King has brought back a large number of civilians and cultivators from the south. This is a supplement to the strength of the Northern Frontier. At the same time, it is also a key point for us to break out of this situation. If we can use it properly, all our troubles won't be trouble." "The Hengguan Mountains! The Hengguan Mountains?" Lei Qiuxing and Li Zhong cried out in surprise, almost one after the other. Only their tones were slightly different. Lei Qiuxing was somewhat shocked, but when he looked at Li Zhongxing, his eyes were clearly filled with gratification. He had never fought with Li Zhongxing on the battlefield, but arranging troops and formations wasn't all of a general's talent. Outstanding foresight and the ability to adapt according to the situation were the important factors that determined whether a general was outstanding or not. If the Northern Frontier attacked the Xuanjin dynasty, the Sky Demon would take advantage of it. Conversely, if the Northern Frontier attacked the Sky Demon, the Xuanjin dynasty would also take advantage of it. But just like before, if they didn't do anything with such a great opportunity in front of them, even Li Zhong, who advocated not to make any big moves at this time, couldn't help but feel disappointed. How to break out of this situation? It could be said to be simple, but it could also be said to be difficult. The Shuangjin dynasty was actually more worried about the coming war than the northern frontier. Because of the northern frontier scheme and the sky demon's arrival, the Shuangjin dynasty had suffered heavy losses one after another. They had lost a lot of manpower and resources. Even Mirror Frostkagen felt that his position was in danger. According to the rules of the grasslands, Mirror Frostkagen had to win to his heart's content and bring honor and resources to the warriors of the grasslands. Otherwise, there would be chaos soon. But looking around, it seemed like the northern frontier was the only one that was easy to bully. This was the reason why the Shuangjin dynasty had their eyes on the northern frontier. If not for their fear of Lin Yuan, and the fact that the northern frontier was not as strong as the other dynasties, the Shuangjin dynasty would have attacked them a long time ago. Chapter 10:15. The easiest way to break out of this situation was to let the Shuangjin dynasty fall into war. When they were too busy to take care of themselves, they would naturally stop thinking about how to plunder the northern frontier. The northern frontier would also have enough depth to attack the sky demon. When everything was settled down, the Shuangjin dynasty would also inevitably pay the price for their current actions. How could the Shuangjin dynasty fall into war when the northern frontier didn't take action? The Hengguan Mountains. Originally, the various monster clans and even the Monster King court in the Hengguan Mountains had an excellent relationship with the northern frontier. Every time a monster tide was launched, the monsters that were supposed to attack the Xinwu dynasty would be diverted to another direction. This undoubtedly made the other 6 dynasties suffer. After all, although the Hengguan Mountains was only a land monster range that was raised by the 7 dynasties, strictly speaking, none of the 7 dynasties could face the attack of the Hengguan Mountains alone. Even if the monster tide only increased the intensity of the monster tide, it was enough to make one of the dynasties pay an extremely heavy price. Later on, because of the immortals, the connection between the Hengguan Mountains and the northern frontier was cut off. However, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce could still safely pass through the Hengguan Mountains for trade. Neither the immortals nor the monsters of the Hengguan Mountains would attack them. However, any spies sent by the higher-ups of the northern frontier never returned. This unusual situation clearly showed that all the disturbances of the immortals and the monsters of the Hengguan Mountains were caused by the same person. Now that the mastermind had been severely injured by the Dragon King and had no time to deal with other matters in a short period of time, what else could they do but contact the monsters of the Hengguan Mountains? But was it really that simple? Let me make it clear first. I don't mean to pour cold water on you guys, but in a sense, you guys are thinking too much. Don't forget that there are also changes in the Hengguan Mountains. 2 of the 3 Beast Kings are missing. The Beast King Kirin is still seriously injured and unconscious. Even if they have calmed down the disturbances in the Hengguan Mountains, the aftermath is only the beginning of all the complicated things. Let's not talk about the fact that the Beast Lord, the Qilin, already had the thought of abdicating and giving the title of Beast Lord to other monster beasts. Even if the Beast Lord, the Qilin, had never expressed such thoughts, the monster beast clans in the Hengguan Mountain range would not miss such a good opportunity. Once they obtained the authority of the Monster Beast Imperial Court and the title of Beast Lord, coupled with the power of the monster beast clans behind them, it would be hard to say if the other party would still maintain the same attitude towards us as before. In the past, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce could run amok in the Hengguan Mountains because the Beast King Kirin himself supported the Dragon King, with the Beast King above them. Even if the other monster clans were dissatisfied, they could only accept this fact. However, the new Beast King's attitude towards the northern frontier was still a mystery. Of course, even if the new Beast King had just ascended to the throne and needed strong support to stabilize his position, he would still adopt a conciliatory policy towards the northern frontier. However, would the monster clans behind him give up on the benefits of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce? Even if the monster clans were willing to give up, what would the other powerful clans think? No matter how amazing the new Beast King is, there is one thing that is without a doubt. After becoming the Beast King, no matter how powerful he is, there will still be existences in the entire Hungduan Mountains that can contend against him. Therefore, whether or not the Beast King can subdue all the other beasts is mainly dependent on his prestige and credibility. A new Beast King does not possess these conditions. Li Zhong narrowed his eyes slightly and said meaningfully, "Also, don't forget that our Dragon King is also a strong candidate for the position of Beast King. He has the favor of the Beast King Kirin and the 3 other Beast Kings. He also has the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce and the armed forces of the entire northern frontier. On top of that, the Dragon King's current terrifying strength. If he wants to become the Beast King, it is only a matter of time. Therefore, the moment we enter the Hungduan Mountains, before we can do anything, those monster clans that want to fight for the position of Beast King will join hands to suppress us." These words could be said to be very true. In Lin Yuan's previous world, when a chance for promotion was placed in front of them, the other candidates would undoubtedly cheer when a convincing candidate did not participate in the election due to some coincidence. However, in the process of the election, the person who did not participate in the election suddenly wanted to participate in the election. Then the other candidates would immediately put aside their grudges and join hands to kick this guy out of the election. You're right. I am indeed the most powerful successor to the position of Beast Lord. Especially now, my strength and influence are all stronger than those so-called great demonic beast clans. Unless they join hands to deal with me, any great demonic beast clan that faces me alone will be easily destroyed. Don't underestimate the intelligence of demonic beasts. Once I appear in the Hungduan Mountain Range, I will definitely be besieged by demonic beasts from all over. Lin Yuan nodded slightly and agreed with Li Zhizhong's words. However, after a moment, Lin Yuan changed the topic and said with a sinister smile, "But the problem is, who told you that I want the position of Beast King?" As soon as he finished speaking, the expressions of everyone present changed. Just as Li Zhong had said before, the profits brought by the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce were incomparably huge. Even the Guardians of the Heavenly Gate did not dare to say that they could completely ignore it, especially those Dao Initiation Realm cultivators who were comparable to Monster Kings. Their demand for cultivation resources was incomparably huge, so when Lin Yuan wanted to kick them out, there was such a huge reaction. How could the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce have such huge profits? Firstly, the boss of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce was Lin Yuan, a dragon bloodline monster from the Hungduan Mountains. No matter how much the monster clans criticized Lin Yuan behind his back, they still had to show some respect to the dragon clan of the 4 seas on the surface. In addition, the Beast King Kirin and the 3 Beast Kings were also included. Some monster clans that did not want to compete for the position of Beast King were actually optimistic about Lin Yuan. Therefore, the caravans of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce could be said to be unscrupulous in the Hungduan Mountains. As long as they did not violate any taboos or take the initiative to step into some forbidden areas, the monsters in the Hungduan Mountains would turn a blind eye. Secondly, because of the existence of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, it was difficult for other humans to enter the Hungduan Mountains to collect phase. After all, Lin Yuan was a monster, and no matter what, he was still a monster of the Hungduan Mountains. Therefore, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce brought them all kinds of convenience. At the same time, if a monster used phase or monster corpses to exchange for supplies, Lin Yuan would give a fair price. This was something that other human chambers of commerce could not do, or rather, it was difficult to maintain. Of course, humans had always been robbing the Hungduan Mountains. There was no such thing as negotiation. Chapter 10:16. Thirdly, the power of the land goblin beasts had always been limited to the Hungduan Mountains. Lin Yuan could be said to have the merit of expanding the territory. Meanwhile, there was another demon venerable who was tyrannical in the southern wastelands. Even though he used the banner of the goblin beasts, he had formed his own demon bloodline and had nothing to do with the Hungduan Mountains. His subordinates were mainly goblin beasts that lived in swamps, water bodies, and miasma forests. They had nothing to do with the Hungduan Mountains. Although the demon venerable in the southern wastelands lived on land, there was no doubt that they had a closer relationship with the endless sea. Fourthly, the special geographical environment of the northern frontier was there. Other than the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, no other group could cross the Hungduan Mountains. Just like how many ancient gods were sleeping in the endless sea and how many ancestral demons were hidden, the Hungduan Mountains, which was the leader of the land goblin bloodlines, was definitely not simple. Not to mention ordinary merchant groups. Even if you could invite the Heavenly Gate Guardians to escort you, there was a possibility that you would die in the Hungduan Mountains if you were not careful. Thus, no merchant group could move around as easily as the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Unless you only made deals with the neighboring empires, you would have to pass through the northern frontier. When that time came, you would naturally take your revenge. It was worth mentioning that there had been people who had intercepted and killed the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce and snatched the keepsake of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce while traveling through the Hungduan Mountains. However, those who had done so had basically become dead. The reason was very simple. The keepsake of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce had a time limit. From the northern frontier to the other empires through the Hungduan Mountains, a round trip would only take 4 months at most. Furthermore, the keepsake distributed by the northern frontier was different according to different merchant groups' routes. After this time limit, the keepsake would naturally lose its effect. If one still took it out when encountering goblin beasts, they would die extremely miserably. The 4 reasons mentioned above were enough to set off Lin Yuan's extraordinary status in the Hungduan Mountains. Not only was he well established and had made contributions to the Hungduan Mountains, but he had also brought convenience and benefits to the various goblin clans in the Hungduan Mountains. At the same time, he had blocked the interests of the other 6 empires, causing them to have no choice but to cooperate with the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Unless they worked together to destroy the northern frontier, no one could think of doing business. However, the most important thing, all of Lin Yuan's extraordinary privileges in the northern frontier had to be established on the premise that the Beast Lord of the Hungduan Mountains was not greedy. The Beast Lord Kirin and the 3 Beast Lords would not order the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce around. This was because Lin Yuan himself would give them a certain amount of profits. Naturally, these Beast Lords would not make things difficult for the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. However, what if the new Beast Lord was not as calm as the Beast Lord Kirin and was greedy for more profits? If that was the case, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce would be in an awkward position. If the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce lowered its head, its profits would be greatly reduced. Furthermore, this was not the end. This was because the Beast Lord did not have enough prestige and credibility to suppress the other goblin clans. Therefore, after the Beast Lord took the lead, the other goblin clans would also find an excuse to ask for more profits. There was no way to determine whether the new Beast Lord of the northern frontier was greedy or not. However, after living in the border with the goblin clans for so long, although they had seen the honest and forthright side of the goblin clans, they had seen much more about the survival of the fittest and the law of the jungle. Some goblin beasts that looked honest were actually much more sinister than ordinary humans. They would not have the slightest bottom line or scruples when doing things. As for the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce that supported the development of the northern frontier, it was starting to feel powerless. Some of the projects and even the research and development projects of the Ministry of Works were forced to stop. If its income was further reduced, the northern frontier might collapse because of this. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan could not wait to reclaim the Central Plains and the South. After all, only by increasing income and reducing expenditure could one become rich. The northern frontier could no longer reduce expenditure. He was not a lazy transmigrator who did not have a goal and only wanted to dominate the other world. After coming into contact with the secrets of the ancient times, even if he did not want to return to the world of his previous life to complete his revenge, there was still a great enemy like Hong Jun pressing down on him. Therefore, for the northern frontier, the best way to solve this problem was to support the next Beast Lord. In other words, I have no way to guarantee that the new Beast Lord would not covet the benefits of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, I can only do my best to guarantee that the new Beast Lord will be a demon of the northern frontier. Although there were many demon beasts living in the northern frontier, no matter whether it was their race or their strength, they were not enough to compete for the position of Beast Lord. The only one who had the qualifications and the ability to guarantee that he would definitely become the Beast Lord was Lin Yuan alone. But now, Lin Yuan had declared that he had no interest in the position of Beast Lord. Was this a joke? The demon beasts in the Hengduan mountain range are all fighting for the position of Beast Lord. However, just like what you have analyzed, the most honorable position in the Hengduan mountain range is now just for show. It sounds impressive, but in reality, it still needs to rely on prestige and credibility to convince the masses. So much so that the Beast Lord who was supposed to rule over all the beasts has become a Beast Lord who can only mediate the disputes between different races. Lin Yuan's blue-white vertical pupils flashed coldly. He said word by word, "This king has no interest in such a Beast Lord. Even if this king wants to be the Beast Lord, this king wants to be the Beast Lord who can subdue all the beasts with his own strength." If that's the case, then there's a lot of room for manipulation. Li Xian, who had been silent all this while, suddenly brightened his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "The reason why the demon beasts in the Hengduan mountain range are afraid of us is undoubtedly because the comprehensive strength of the northern frontier is far greater than theirs. Therefore, if we join the battle, the position of Beast Lord will most likely be ours. However, if we directly declare that we won't compete for the position of Beast Lord as soon as we enter, those demon beasts won't be too hostile towards us." Speaking of this, Li Xian raised his hand and gestured twice. He said excitedly, "With the position of Beast Lord, we only need to promise to help them compete for the position of Beast Lord, and we will be able to get the help of many weaker demon beasts. As for those stronger demon beasts, they may not take us seriously at first, but in order to prevent us from interfering, they will help us. Whether it's sending a beast tide to attack the Frost Mirror grassland or finding out those who are hiding in the Hengduan mountain range, it's only a matter of time. No force has the ability to play hide-and-seek with the demon beasts who have lived there for countless years." Reconsideration. Well said. That's what I think too. As soon as Li Xian's voice fell, everyone around him began to express their opinions. No one doubted what the new Beast Lord would do if he coveted the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Did the Dragon King, who had casually killed 2 demon kings, not even have this bit of prestige? Chapter 10:17. In the next half a month, the armies of the northern frontier were mobilized on a large scale. Regardless of whether it was the Qing River Dynasty or the Xuanzhan Dynasty, other than not being able to send their own spies into the northern frontier, they could clearly see that the number of troops guarding the northern frontier was continuously decreasing. For a time, the 2 empires that were close to the northern frontier had different thoughts. When the emperors went to court, they often looked like they wanted to say something but were hesitant. To be fair, this time, the 4 great powers had joined forces to encircle and suppress the Xinwu dynasty. They had plundered a large amount of resources and food from the Hengduan Mountains and the Endless Sea, but they did not get any of the other benefits. Only the Qing River Dynasty and the Xuanzhan Dynasty had managed to force the Xinwu Dynasty to defend themselves. They had also occupied a lot of territory that originally belonged to the Xinwu Dynasty. In the end, the Sky Demon had appeared out of nowhere, and their armies at the border had suffered heavy losses. Not only had they lost the territory that they had previously seized, but they had also fiercely pulled back their original border. From this, it could be seen that Lei Qiuxing was indeed an ambitious and ruthless person. As an ordinary emperor, he had defied the Heavenly Gate Guardian. Even if he was no match for the Heavenly Gate Guardian, he still wanted to summon the Sky Demon. It was clear that he wanted to drag everyone down with him. Currently, the southern part of the Xinwu dynasty was empty, and the Central Plains was controlled by the Sky Demon. Less than 10% of the Xinwu dynasty's army remained. As for the threat of the northern frontier, to be honest, these empires did not care about it. Not to mention the northern frontier, Even if they included the northern territory that the Xinwu dynasty had not completely digested, they only had less than one-third of the territory of the Xinwu dynasty. Even at its peak, the Xinwu dynasty had been defeated by them, let alone the current northern frontier. However, the problem was that the Sky Demon was not an existence that they could deal with. The northern frontier had a way to kill the Sky Demon, but they could only spend a lot of money to buy the sealing tools from the Heavenly Gate Guardians. Even then, they might not succeed. Therefore, from this point of view, even if the two dynasties had completely lost the opportunity to occupy the Xinwu dynasty's territory, they could only watch as Lin Yuan and the Sky Demon confronted each other, waiting for the rise of the Seventh Dynasty, which was actually ruled by demon beasts. The Xuanjian dynasty could still think about the northern frontier, but in fact, they did not really want the Xinwu dynasty's territory. After all, other than the north where horses could be used for grazing, the other places were simply useless. The Central Plains had many hills, forests, and basins. The south was surrounded by rivers and seas. The northern frontier was mostly mountainous and close to the Hengduan Mountains. If it were not for Lin Yuan, the demon beast that attacked every year would be a hot potato. The terrain of the Xinwu dynasty was not suitable for nomads like the Xuanjian dynasty. If they encountered demon beasts in such a terrain, even if the Xuanjian barbarian army was equipped with war horses with mixed demon beast bloodlines, they could not make use of their advantage of speed to fight against the demon beasts with mounted archery tactics. After all, the Xuanjian barbarian army could migrate to places with more lush water and grass at any time. Therefore, they did not build cities or city walls. They did not know how to defend cities that other dynasties were good at. Just like the nomads in the history of Lin Yuan's previous life, the dynasties of the Central Plains had been defeated by the nomads of the grasslands more than once or twice. Putting aside the involvement of the mythological system, why did the Second Qin dynasty die? That was because the Qin dynasty's army was suppressing the barbarians and other races at the borders. Why was Ing Zheng called a tyrant? Was it purely to slander the Confucian school? Even if he did not want to admit it, Ing Zheng had indeed done something that required a lot of manpower and resources. However, Ing Zheng did not spend so much manpower and resources to build a Pang palace. Instead, it was the Great Wall that was regarded as the soul of the Dragon of China by countless people in the future. It was the Great Wall of the Kingdom of Zheng that could raise an army of 600,000 soldiers in Guangzhou after a long period of calamity. In order to build these great projects that would last for thousands of years, Ing Zheng was scolded as a tyrant. While the later emperors scolded Ing Zheng, they enjoyed the great rivers and mountains that Ing Zheng had created for them with a clear conscience. Apart from the Qin dynasty, the Han dynasty was the same. They had fought against the Xiongnu in the north for many years. In the future, it was said that all the dynasties in the past had died in weakness. Only the Han dynasty had died in strength. From this, one could see how much the Han dynasty had spent in order to fight against the Xiongnu. The rebellion of the five barbarians, the shame of Jingkong, the establishment of the Meng Yuan dynasty, and even the invasion of the Qing dynasty, too much history had proven the strength of the steppe tribes. In other words, their strategy of strength wins through hard work was undoubtedly the bane of the farming dynasties in the Central Plains. Even the great Emperor Qin Huang and the Emperor of Han Wu had to build the Great Wall and spend all their resources on military affairs. It was not something that could be covered up by a few words of self-deception. But then again, once the other tribes of the grasslands entered the Central Plains, they would have no choice but to give up their original nomadic habits and learn to be a dynasty that focused on farming. They had to learn the culture of the Han people, learn the knowledge of the Han people, and learn how to dress up. Then they would perish. Qi Baisher once said, "Those who learn from me will live. Those who imitate me will die." What he meant was that only by studying and learning from other people's things and then fusing them with one's own things could one go further. Blindly learning and copying would only accelerate one's own demise. The dynasties of the steppe tribes in his previous life did not understand this point. Or rather, even if they understood, they would still walk down this path. That was because there were too many life-threatening things in the steppe tribes. No one would be willing to hide in that kind of barren land to make a living. This was also the reason why the steppe tribes were the mortal enemies of the Central Plains. But in the Tianwu world, it was a completely different matter. The disasters of the steppe tribes were nothing to cultivators. On the other hand, the nomadic steppe tribes who worshipped the strong were all cultivators. So they did not envy the wealth of the farming dynasties. On the contrary, they enjoyed the freedom of the steppe tribes. In this small difference, the Shuangjian dynasty was clearly different from the steppe tribes in Lin Yuan's previous life. That was because they did not want to occupy the territory of the Xinwu dynasty at all. Compared to those useless things, they wanted the various resources stored in the northern frontier. They wanted to plunder large amounts of talents from all walks of life in the northern frontier. They wanted nothing more than to empty the northern frontier. So, the Qinjiang dynasty could obediently stay in their own land. However, the Shuangjian dynasty could not. They were constantly thinking about attacking the northern frontier. They wanted to make a fortune and avenge their previous humiliation. Frost Mirror Plains, Blood Liao tribe, in a tent sewn from the skin of a white wolf. The third prince of the Shuangjian dynasty kept rubbing his forehead. His black and white eyes shone brightly. In front of him was a war sand table that was perfectly replicated to a certain scale. From this, it could be seen that the Shuangjian dynasty had indeed put in a lot of effort. They had even scouted and mapped out the terrain of the northern frontier. They had returned to make a war sand table like this, so that they could transmit real-time information to the rear and deduce the direction of the war. Chapter 1018. The Northern Frontier. Where have the troops of the Northern Frontier been transferred to? The third prince's eyes kept scanning the war sand table. After thinking for a while, he slowly reached out his hand and picked up the military models behind the Great Wall, which was built by the Northern Frontier to resist the cavalry of the Shuangjian dynasty. The military models were made to perfection, and even some details on the armor were exactly the same as the Southern expedition. The military models that were picked up were all holding war flags with the words Southern Expedition written on them. Although they were just models, they exuded an inexplicable killing intent. The Azure River Empire could not afford to offend the Northern Frontier. When fighting against other empires, the Azure River Empire could still rely on the two great rivers and the terrain of the Hengduan Mountains to defend themselves. However, such terrain was not only useless in front of the Black Water Dragon King, who was a demonic beast. On the other hand, the aquatic demonic beasts in the Endless Sea and the Hengduan Mountains, and even the demon venerable in the southern wilderness, would stand on the northern frontier to attack the Azure River Empire in this war to divide the races, regardless of whether they were willing or not. It was true that the Baixing Navy was powerful, but they could only stabilize the demonic beasts in the Wei River. The other great river, the Endless Sea, and even the Hengduan Mountains were the most fatal threats to the Azure River Empire. To put it in an exaggerated way, if Lin Yuan wanted to start a war against the Azure River Empire, he did not even need to use the troops of the northern frontier. Holding the military models representing the southern expedition, the third prince looked back and forth on the war sand table. He was a little hesitant as he murmured, "The northern frontier will not ignore our attitude. If they want to attack the Sky Demon, they will definitely test us first." However, not only have the troops guarding the Great Wall not come out, they have even been transferred to other places. Therefore, the target of these troops is neither us nor the Sky Demon. It can only be, with a glint in his eyes, the third prince placed the military models one by one on the region representing the Hengduan Mountains. The situation suddenly became clear. However, the third prince's face did not have the slightest hint of joy from seeing through the actions of the northern frontier. On the contrary, a hint of worry appeared out of thin air, quickly destroying his handsome face into a frown, as if he had eaten a fly alive. If the Shuangjian dynasty attacked the Sky Demon Plains, they would be held back by the Shuangjian cavalry, which would give the Sky Demon the opportunity to invade. If the Shuangjian dynasty attacked the Sky Demon Plains, they would be held back by the Shuangjian cavalry. Although the Shuangjian dynasty had never contacted the Sky Demon before, the two sides had formed an alliance. Although it was a little strange, if one side was unlucky, the other side would benefit. The purpose of marching into the Hungduan Mountains is undoubtedly to keep the Xuanjian dynasty busy. The third prince shook his head with a bitter smile and murmured, "My father has recovered. Although he still has the heroic spirit of conquering the plains, his vision is so cloudy that he can't even understand the current situation. I really can't think of a worse move than to provoke the northern frontier at this time." The Xuanjian dynasty had suffered heavy losses in the war against the Xinwu dynasty when they attacked the northern frontier. If not for the fact that the third prince's father still had the prestige from when he was young, and that the Blood Liao cavalry that he had painstakingly built up over the years was a real army of the Xuanjian grassland, the Xuanjian Khan would have changed his face by now. For the nomads, using a great victory and countless resources to make up for the previous losses was not a bad idea. This was the foundation of their foothold. Therefore, when the Xuanjian Khan proposed to form an alliance of all tribes again, the third prince did not express any opinion. But now, there was a problem. Of all the tribes to choose, why did they have to choose the northern frontier? Yes, the northern frontier was indeed the weakest force in the vicinity of the Xuanjian dynasty. But this weakness was relative. If not for the Black Jiao, the northern frontier would never have reached its current height. In other words, it was a miracle that the northern frontier could become so powerful in such a short time. Was it so hard to imagine that a man who had created countless miracles could create another miracle? Even if they wanted to attack the northern frontier, they had to win first. Now, before the armies of the various tribes of the Reflection Frost dynasty had gathered together, the north had already flipped the table. They didn't even test the waters and directly attacked the Hungduan mountain range. If there were no accidents, this meant that the demonic beasts in the Hungduan mountain range would soon erupt into a stampede and flood the Reflection Frost grassland. Test the waters? There was no need for that. There were 50 great Daos, and 49 of them had escaped. But the human heart had always been greedy and insatiable. No one could truly grasp the thoughts of others. Therefore, the first thing that countless talented and bold kings did after leaving behind a major event that would be recorded in the annals of history was to kill the meritorious subjects. They mercilessly killed the old brothers who had accompanied them through countless hardships. Because no matter what the thoughts of these people were, they were indeed a threat to the position of these kings. If the northern frontier really came to test the Xuanjian dynasty, then the Frost Mirror Khan could pretend that he was scared by the Black Jiao. When the northern frontier army started to fight the Sky Demon, the northern frontier could only hold their noses and accept the loss. What could the northern frontier do after they got what they wanted? Would the Xuanjian dynasty be afraid of the northern frontier if they fought on the grassland? Now is not the time for the northern frontier to think about how to break out of this situation. We should be the ones thinking about how to break out of this situation. The light in the third prince's eyes dimmed as he started to calculate in his mind. After a while, he muttered with a pale face, "Now that the northern frontier army has been transferred away, my father will definitely not let go of this opportunity. He might not wait for the other tribes that haven't arrived yet to meet up with them. He might just send someone to give the order and lead the army to battle. But the northern frontier's Great Wall is not that easy to break through. Once our main forces are held back by the northern frontier under the Great Wall, the consequences will be unimaginable once the beast tide erupts." He paused for a while and clenched his fists. He gritted his teeth and said, "This is a trap. This is a trap. That Black Jiao is tricking us into attacking the Great Wall of the northern frontier. His goal is not as simple as reclaiming the Central Plains and the south of the Xinwu dynasty. Once he takes care of the Sky Demon, we will be the next target of the northern frontier. No, I have to go and tell my father. We must not take advantage of this opportunity to attack the northern frontier." The third prince got up and staggered out of his tent. He happened to see a Shuel Yao knight coming over on a horse. Shuel Yao knight suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Third prince, the scouts have reported that the northern frontier army has been mobilized on a large scale. They are suspected to be attacking the Sky Demon of the Central Plains. The Great Khan is still personally leading the army. He asked me to come and tell you that while he is personally leading the army, he has entrusted the role of regent to you. This is the official seal that the Great Khan has given you." A cold wind suddenly blew on the grassland, causing the third prince, whose mind was blank, to shiver. Chapter 1019. How? How could that be? Hearing this, the third prince felt as if something had exploded in his head. All of his thoughts had been blasted into a pile of mush. Right now, there was only one thought in his mind. It's over. The Xuanjian dynasty is finished. How could it not be? Third prince, you are the Khan's most outstanding son. This time, the Khan will definitely return victorious. Our Blood Liao tribe's reputation will continue to shake the steppe. However, the Khan is getting old, and I'm afraid he already has thoughts of passing down the throne to his successor. Thus, third prince, you will be in charge of supervising the country. You must ensure that supplies are delivered to the front lines on time. Don't ask for merit. Just make sure you don't make any mistakes. Us old brothers may retire with the Khan, but our sons will still become Blood Liao knights. They will fight for the Blood Liao tribe and the Xuanjian dynasty. The Blood Liao knight narrowed his eyes. He seemed to be in a good mood. The Mirror Frost dynasty was undoubtedly one of the most powerful dynasties among the 7 dynasties. However, due to their nomadic system, all kinds of agricultural and industrial industries were extremely backward. If they wanted to obtain wealth, they could only rely on plundering. In this process, there were rich places and there were also poor places. Some places had a culture that was not inferior to the Mirror Frost grassland. There were also some places that were stable and peaceful. The people living there were like two-legged sheep. The Mirror Frost Khagan basically made all the decisions regarding plundering and plundering. It was naturally not a bad decision to befriend the next Mirror Frost Khagan in advance. Those who relied on their bravery to run amok in the grassland and looked down on everyone were either invincible or died without a burial ground. Khan Xuanjian had dominated the steppe all his life, conquering countless enemies and plundering countless places. He had left behind quite a few sons, but not all of them were talented. The most outstanding of them were undoubtedly the 13th prince, who was as brave as a tiger, and the 3rd prince, who was as cunning as a fox. The next Khan would undoubtedly be chosen from these two. Whether it was the old Khan or the leaders of the other tribes, they all favored the 13th prince. A Khan who could ride a horse, draw a bow, and lead the Frost Mirror Steppe cavalry across the steppe was much more to their liking than a Khan who only knew how to strategize in the rear. However, during the attack on the northern frontier, the 13th prince had been captured. Even now, there was no news of him. He was suspected to be dead. This time, Khan Xuanjian might have gone to the northern frontier to see if he could bring back his favorite son. If the 13th prince was really dead, then the Khan Xuanjian Khan's position could only be passed to the 3rd prince. Huh, the next Khan Xuanjian Khan? The 3rd prince waved his sleeve and roared, "I've been weak since I was a child. Although I can cultivate, I can't control the Xuanjian warhorse. Therefore, I order you to depart immediately. You must catch up with my father before the Xuanjian tribal alliance reaches the Great Wall of the northern frontier. Do whatever it takes to stop them from leaving. Otherwise, the Xuanjian dynasty will perish in this battle." This? Knight Xueliao was slightly stunned. His eyes were filled with confusion. This time, the tribes of the Xuanjian dynasty were united. They didn't attack the northern frontier and the Xinwu dynasty separately like before. They also didn't provoke the Sky Demon. No matter how you looked at it, they wouldn't lose. How could they lose when they were riding on flying dragons? Why would the Xuanjian dynasty perish in this battle? Furthermore, the current Mirror Frost Khagan was no pushover. He was one of the 4 war gods alongside Lei Qiusheng, Yan Xingqi, and Zhao Xiang. He was a famous general among famous generals. In his early years, he was the most insignificant son of the previous Mirror Frost Khagan. He was even exiled to the border of the Mirror Frost grassland to build his own tribe. In the end, when Yan Xingqi came to attack them because the Xuanjian dynasty had plundered the Wanjian dynasty's border, they managed to hold off Yan Xingqi, who was the Wanjian dynasty's most adept at attacking, for 3 whole months with a temporary army made up of criminals and slaves. After receiving the support of the Mirror Frost Royal Court's elite army, they almost killed Yin Xingqi and forced him to retreat from the grassland. Then, Yin Xingqi took advantage of the situation and crushed the Wanjian dynasty's border army, completely destroying the last army of the Wanjian dynasty that could contend with Lei Qiuxing. It was during that battle that Yin Xingqi was held back in the Mirror Frost grassland, giving Lei Qiuxing the perfect opportunity to usurp the throne. By the time Yin Xingqi summoned the Fallen Star army from his fief and arrived at the royal capital, it was already too late. Of course, legends were always exaggerated. For example, the old Khan almost killed Yin Xingqi. If it wasn't for Lei Qiuxing stabbing him in the back, Yin Xingqi wouldn't have retreated to save the emperor. The outcome of that battle was unpredictable, but without a doubt, the old Khan's military prowess was enough to prove that he was able to hold off Yin Xingqi for 3 whole months with a bunch of small fries. A general like this, who had dominated the grassland for decades, would never think that he would lose just because of some alarmist words. Instead, it would arouse the old Khan's rebellious mentality. And as the despicable person who tried to stop the Xuanjian dynasty's plan, he would definitely die. The third prince saw that Shueliao Knight still hadn't moved. He shouted out, "Take advantage of the fact that Father Khan hasn't gone too far. The speed of the army will definitely be slower than if you ride alone. If this matter fails, the Reflection Frost dynasty might even be destroyed. But before that happens, this solitude absolutely has the ability to slaughter your entire clan." Knight Shueliao gulped helplessly and said, "Third prince, it's not that this subordinate is unwilling to serve you, but there's really no other way. You have to give this subordinate a reason so that this subordinate can convince the Khan. It's a long story, and I can't explain it in a few words. Anyway, you go ahead and hold my father back. Once I've dealt with the matter at hand, I will personally go to the frontline camp. When that time comes, I will personally explain the pros and cons to my father. If you succeed, it will be a great achievement. But if you fail to do what I gave you, just wait for me to wipe out your entire clan." The third prince's eyes darkened. Shueliao Knight didn't say anything else. He turned his horse around and chased after the Mirror Frost Khan's army. No one knew a son better than his father. On the other hand, after decades of living together, the third prince also understood his father. If he didn't have a good reason, he wouldn't give up on the idea of attacking the northern frontier. Even if he told his father his opinion, his father would still be stubborn and would even be laughed at for being an alarmist. So, all he could do now was to stall for time and wait for the Black Jiao to complete its plan in the Hunduan Mountains. When that time came, chaos would appear. If his father wasn't held back by the Great Wall of the northern frontier, then everything could still be saved. No matter how strong the alliance between the Hunduan Mountains and the northern frontier was, they still had to consider the opinions of the other dynasties, right? Chapter 10:20. First of all, the Hunduan Mountain Range's demonic beasts were indeed very strong. Even the Xuanjian dynasty's proudest warriors were no match for the demonic beasts living in the Hunduan Mountain Range. If both sides were to fight to the death, the Xuanjian dynasty would definitely lose. However, the problem was that if the Hunduan Mountain Range attacked the Xuanjian dynasty on a large scale, they would naturally be able to destroy them. However, the Xuanjian dynasty at its peak could not be compared to the Xuanjian dynasty at its weakest. As long as the Hunduan Mountain Range was not engulfed by the Beast Tide immediately, the Hunduan Mountain Range would have to withdraw the Beast Tide when the other empires expressed their stance. No matter how powerful the Hunduan Mountain Range was, could they be more powerful than the 6 empires working together? The Xinwu dynasty was destroyed because Lei Qiuxing teamed up with the Sky Demon. It was an act of self-destruction. Meanwhile, the northern frontier was rising. In addition, the northern frontier king was indeed a human being. Therefore, under the premise that the northern frontier could kill the Sky Demon and rely on Lin Yuan's mysterious background, the other 6 empires could only turn a blind eye and allow the northern frontier to become one of the 7 new empires. However, the Xuanjian dynasty would not be destroyed. If the other 5 empires watched the Shuangjian dynasty being destroyed by the Black Jiao teamed up with the Hengduan mountain range, who knew if they would be the next target of the northern frontier? As long as we can hold on until the Hengduan mountain range changes, as long as we can hold on until this situation will naturally be resolved, the third prince sighed, tightened the snow-white fox fur coat around his body, and murmured, my father, even if you are too old, you should open your eyes once in a while and look at the world. Don't drag the entire frost mirror grassland down with you. Otherwise, I will have to. As he muttered to himself, he walked further and further away. His figure gradually disappeared in the cold wind. At the same time, on the great wall of the northern frontier, a bald man in his 30s stroked his mustache, a cold glint flashing through his eagle-like eyes. Previously, when the northern frontier army swept across the north, he was the first enemy general that Li Zhongxing encountered. With a clear strategy of rewards and a simple fortified town, he delayed the main force of the southern expedition led by Li Zhongxing for a whole day. It could even be said that if the southern expedition army was strong enough, it was far from what the rebel army in the northern frontier army could contend with. If he had more soldiers and more provisions, he could have delayed Li Zhongxing for a longer period of time. He might even have been able to turn defeat into victory and defeat the northern frontier army. Now he was a marquis in the southern expedition army. He had a total of 20,000 soldiers under his command. The soldiers were selected from the old northern frontier army, who had a tough culture. Their equipment was also the best standard equipment from the Ministry of Works. Although he was not famous among the generals in the northern frontier, he was Li Zhongxing's most trusted right-hand man. At the same time, he was also the last organized garrison on the Great Wall of the northern frontier. The place that he was ordered to be stationed at was built later on. It was not based on a city. It was built with cement and mountains. It was a strong pass that could not be broken through by one man. However, at the same time, this was the most prominent and weakest part of the entire defense system of the northern frontier Great Wall. Unlike other places where soldiers could be recruited to fight at any time and where it was not convenient to obtain supplies from the city, this place had to be defended by a strong army. This was because this place was built as a protruding point for the purpose of engaging in battle. According to the Frost Mirror Cavalry art, the northern frontier army had to pass through this place. In fact, they had to conquer this pass before they could continue to the real Great Wall of the northern frontier. Therefore, it was obvious that this place would be the first battlefield between the northern frontier army and the Frost Mirror Cavalry art. It would also be the cruelest meat grinder in the entire war. The bald man scratched his head. His eyes were glowing fiercely, making him look like a human-shaped ferocious beast. He roared, Motherf Astris Kerr, even a bunch of brats who just graduated from the military academy can step on your head and become a member of the so-called general class of the northern frontier army. As long as you can survive, you will at least be a deputy general in the future. Look at you idiots. You were the first to join the army in the northern frontier army, but you are still nothing. The soldiers around him looked helpless, but no one said anything to refute him. First of all, their marquis was telling the truth. However, they couldn't figure it out either. Since ancient times, all the famous generals had fought on the battlefield. Even if they were trained by the military books in the military academy, they were just armchair strategists. How could they start so much better than veterans like them? Second of all, although their marquis was a little vulgar with his words, his martial arts were really strong. Putting aside the fact that his cultivation was much higher than theirs, even if both sides suppressed their cultivation, there was no doubt that this marquis was a ferocious man who could fight against 100 people by himself. It was as if he was really a ferocious beast under his human body. Seeing the helpless expressions around him, the bald man, who felt bored, rolled his eyes and roared. I don't know if you are convinced that those brats are riding on your heads, but I'm definitely not convinced. Therefore, this battle is your chance to turn the tables around. I've already made a deal with that bastard Li Zhongxing. If you can chop off the heads of 5 barbarians, you'll be promoted by 1 rank. The more you kill, the higher you'll be promoted. For those who survive after the battle, I'll personally go to the southern expedition encampment and ask for your reward. Even if the Dragon King comes, I'll still have the same attitude. Marquis Wu, long live the northern frontier. Marquis Wu, long live the northern frontier. Marquis Wu, long live the northern frontier. As the bald man's voice fell, the soldiers around him clearly became spirited. After all, the world was not peaceful now. Soldiers really had to fight on the battlefield. A single mistake could lead to death or disability. As military cultivators at the bottom of society, it was definitely very difficult for them to get their hands on those spiritual items that could regenerate broken limbs. Therefore, once they were disabled, they would basically lose their lives. As long as there was another way out, not many people would be willing to join the military. No matter what reason they joined the military in the first place, they were already here. If they wanted to retire, they had to follow the rules of the northern frontier. After a certain number of years, they could apply for retirement and be demobilized. Then, they would be able to obtain a job or land assigned by the northern frontier and live as an ordinary person. Now, other than living a healthy life, the only thing they had left to do was to make contributions. The temptation of 5 officers being promoted by 1 rank was not ordinary. After all, with a promotion, whether it was salary or safety, it would greatly increase. Apart from fierce people like Gao Bujin, who was named Champion General, how many high-ranking officers would fight on the front lines? If Lin Yuan were here, he would definitely sigh. This bald man whom Li Zhongxing had captured and entrusted with an important task was indeed too low-key. Otherwise, with his ability, he would definitely be able to participate in the previous meeting in Shunning City. Chapter 10:21. 5 heads and a promotion of 1 rank. First of all, it was hard to say whether they could win against the entire army of the Frost Mirror Grassland. Even if they could survive until the change in the Hungduan Mountains and the Northern Frontier Army came to their aid, how many of them could survive? And of those who survived, how many of them could successfully chop off 5 or more heads? Of course, he would do as he said. However, he knew very well that this was nothing more than a way to boost the morale of his army. On the battlefield, life and death could be decided in an instant. How could he have so many chances to chop off the heads of his enemies and carry them with him? However, this idea was too powerful. If one were to expand it further, it would be the military merit system that the Great Qin Empire relied on to conquer the 6 states. During the spring and autumn warring states period, the reform of the state of Wei was the earliest. As the saying went, one must work hard in order to earn merit. It completely changed the practice of the Zhou imperial family, selecting people from relatives and old friends to obtain official positions or military ranks. After that, it was the reform of the state of Wu, who was killed by the nobles of the state of Chu. The reform of the state of Chu led to the reform of the state of Chu. Using the reduced ranks of nobles, the state of Chu used the reduced ranks of nobles to strengthen the state of Chu. These 2 states were undoubtedly the strongest in the warring states period. After that, it was the military merit system that Xiangyang proposed after the reform of the state of Qin. In Xiangyang's reform, anyone who made military contributions could enjoy a noble title regardless of their family background, social class, or social class. In an instant, it created a valiant Qin empire where every citizen was a soldier and was willing to fight. Following that, Xiangyang proposed that those from the imperial family who did not make military contributions could not be a subordinate, which removed the privilege of the imperial family and the nobles who obtained a high rank based on their bloodline. That was how the Great Qin came to have the Meng clan, Wang clan, and other clans that produced many famous generals. Even the Ying clan had many generals who were good at war. Unfortunately, even if Lin Yuan knew about this, he would not adopt the military merit system as the standard for the Northern Frontier Army. This was because not only had the system allowed Great Qin to sweep through the 6 nations, but it had also nearly destroyed Great Qin. For example, the famous General Li Xian of the Qin dynasty at the end of the Warring States period. If one carefully studied his military exploits, one could see that when Li Xian was at his peak, he was a famous general who could be mentioned in the same breath as Meng Tian in the Qin dynasty. He was also a typical example of successful military exploits under the system of military exploits. His war record was extremely dazzling. He had participated in a series of battles such as attacking Zhao, exterminating Yin, exterminating Chu, and exterminating Qi. However, it was as if a man like him had been forgotten by the historians. Only in the historical records related to Li Xian could one see the figure of Li Xian. Nevertheless, it was not difficult to tell that Li Xian was a general highly valued and trusted by Ying Zheng, and that emperor, who was a man of great talent and bold vision, had given Li Xian sufficient authority and a stage for him to display his talents. However, Li Xian was a man who liked to use his troops in dangerous situations, and he was also very greedy for military exploits under the system of military exploits. The reason why he was not recorded in the history books was because he was one of the few real stains in Ying Zheng's life. According to the history books, when Qin dynasty attacked Chu dynasty, Ying Zheng asked Wang Jian how many soldiers and horses he needed. Wang Jian said 600,000, but Li Xian said 200,000 would be enough. Ying Zheng was overjoyed and said, "General Wang is already old. Why are you afraid? General Li is indeed a man of great courage. What you said is true." This was a scene that was recorded in the historical records. After that, during the war against Chu dynasty, Li Xian vividly taught Ying Zheng a lesson called Your Father or Your Father, and the lesson was very expensive. The 200,000 Qin soldiers that Ying Zheng assigned to Li Xian to attack Chu dynasty were defeated by Xiang Yan, and almost all of them were wiped out. After that, Li Xian never appeared on the stage of history again. Of course, there were some historical records that stated that Li Xian did not die in this battle. However, in all the later battles, Li Xian basically played a supporting role and did all the work for Li Xian. In the history books, Li Xian was also erased, and even the cause of his death was not explained. Ironically, when the 200,000 Qin soldiers were completely wiped out and the Great Qin Empire was facing a crisis, the historical records once again recorded that Ying Zheng invited Wang Jian out and said with an extremely angry tone, "I did not use the general strategy. Li Xian is indeed a disgrace to the Qin army." Li Xian was defeated by his own arrogance, and Ying Zheng was defeated by his own credulity. However, there was no doubt that Li Xian's defeat was due to the military merit system. Under such a system, a general like Li Xian would be born. If he wanted to win, he would win, but if he wanted to lose, he would lose. There was no possibility of being in the middle. Although Lin Yuan was invincible, that was only for himself. In the future, the northern frontier would become bigger and bigger, and the Xinwu dynasty or the Tianwu continent would not be the end of his conquest. In the not-too-distant future, he would even be like the great desolate world, conquering thousands of worlds, and constantly absorbing nutrients for himself to grow. In the end, he would lead an army into the great desolate world, and work together with the other system hosts to fight against Hongjun and his subordinates. If the northern frontier was defeated, with Lin Yuan, the northern frontier could still continue to exist. However, in the future, when the Tianwu world was defeated in the great desolate world, could Lin Yuan protect the entire world? This kind of defeat that could easily cause the entire army to be wiped out was not something he could accept. Seeing the excitement on the faces of the surrounding soldiers, as if they could not wait to rush out of the Great Wall and kill a few Shuangjin barbarian, the bald man sighed in his heart. He was afraid that he had used too much strength this time. After thinking for a while, his eyes narrowed, and he added, "However, brothers, there will be opportunities for promotion and wealth in the future. The most important thing is to survive. Although my attitude is clear, I still have to give the higher-ups a way out. Therefore, in addition to the reward, I have to set another rule for you. From now on, 5 people will work together in a team. If one of you dies, the other 4 will be punished, and you will have to kill the enemy to atone for your crimes. If one of you dies, you will have to kill 1 more enemy, and if 2 of you die, you will have to kill 2 more enemy. The number of heads you cut off will be subtracted from the number of your comrades who died in battle. Only then will the higher-ups recognize the reward I set for you. Do you understand?" It was impossible to win a battle with hot-bloodedness and valiance. Even if they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. However, with the reward in front of the rules, these little bastards would not risk their lives to harvest the heads of the Shuangjian barbarian. Instead, they would really work together in battle. Not only would the battle formation increase their chances of victory, it would also reduce the casualties. The possibility of them dragging on until the Hengduan mountain range change would also be greater. The surrounding soldiers were silent for a moment before they agreed once again. The rules were set not only to give the higher-ups a way out, but also to protect themselves. This was to prevent some people who were hot-blooded and left the battle formation for promotion and wealth, which would only drag them down. Furthermore, as long as the reward did not change, they would have enough motivation. Naturally, there was no possibility of their enthusiasm decreasing. They would just be more cautious. Chapter 10:22. Northern Frontier, Shunning City. Lin Yuan saw more and more Northern Frontier troops gathering outside the city through the eyes of God. He turned his head to look at Li Zhongxing, who had a calm expression on his face. After the two looked at each other for a moment, Lin Yuan twitched the corner of his mouth and asked doubtfully, "You've mobilized almost the entire Great Wall garrison. Are you sure the remaining guys can withstand the cavalry of the Shuangjian dynasty?" Li Zhongxing was silent for a moment and then turned his head to the side. He lowered his voice and said, "When this general conquered the north, he encountered a powerful fellow in the first battle. With less than 100,000 soldiers, he was able to hold off the main force of the Southern Expedition Army for almost an entire day. Although the result was indeed this general's victory, in terms of the process, this general lost completely." After a pause, he continued, "Among the 100,000 troops, except for less than 10,000 of the original garrison troops, the rest were servants, guards, and even newly recruited able-bodied men. They had received almost no military training, and their equipment was also very simple. Some of them even used pitchforks and kitchen knives to fight against my army. In addition, he lost to me not because he could only hold on for a day, but because my army was far more numerous than his at that time. Under the siege, he would lose sooner or later. In order to avoid a disaster of cannibalism, he compromised and surrendered. Otherwise, I would have wasted a lot of time when I went out to sweep the north." Hearing Lin Yuan's words, Lin Yuan twitched the corner of his mouth and tried hard not to laugh out loud. He did not deny Shun Lin Jun's strength, but he would not blindly praise Shun Lin Jun either. This was because Li Zhongxing, who was trained as a future officer in Shun Lin Jun's reserve force, was not even as good as Luo Su, the former commander of the garrison corps in Jianshan City. He even learned from Luo Su for a period of time before he became the commander-in-chief of the Southern Expedition in the Northern Frontier. Shun Lin Jun was indeed strong, but this kind of strength also led to many mistakes. For example, when Shun Lin Jun fought, he only needed to rely on his strong individual strength and superior equipment and supplies that were far superior to others to flatten the enemy. He did not need good command and tactics at all. The so-called Shun Lin Jun's reserve officers learned how to observe their own team and not affect their fellow soldiers in battle. However, Li Zhongxing had indeed grown a lot after experiencing the war with the Frost Mirror Barbarian and the Sky Demon Corps. This also showed that Shun Lin Jun trained him as an officer because he had the qualifications and not because Shun Lin Jun's higher-ups casually chose him. Some things were better left unsaid. There was no need to say it out loud. However, Li Zhongxing's words had indeed aroused Lin Yuan's interest. Relying on less than 10,000 city guards and a large number of militia to make Li Zhongxing suffer in a situation where their military strength and equipment were inferior, this leader was indeed a talented general. It was even possible that he was an existence that had truly experienced war. The defense of the Great Wall of the Northern Frontier has been handed over to this person by this subordinate. We have also made a deduction. The Frost Mirror Barbarian's ability to play a limited role in a siege battle is extremely limited. In addition, the area of the pass that can be used for battle is not large. In a situation where he does not come out, he can at least hold on for 2 months. Even if the situation changes, in the worst-case scenario, he can hold on for half a month. This is enough to hold on until the Black Water Army cleans up the Northern Frontier's undead and then go to their rescue. It's just that Li Zhongxing still tilted his head, as if he did not want Lin Yuan to see the embarrassment on his face. After a while, he muttered, "This guy likes to make empty promises. After this battle, I'm afraid that this general will have to bleed a little. There is no problem on my side, but I'm afraid that the king of the northern frontier will have some bad ideas. Therefore, I hope that the Dragon King will take care of me." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Of course. If this person can block the Shuangjian dynasty's army for this king, it will be a meritorious service to destroy the country. This king will naturally not be stingy." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan's gaze shifted, and he said in a deep voice, "However, the army outside is almost fully assembled. Then, we should also set off for the Hengduan mountain range. Let's go and give this king's old friends a big surprise." The Blackwater Army was in charge of cleaning up the immortals in the northern frontier. Those underworld river creatures were also with the Blackwater Army. It would take at most half a month to completely clean up the immortals in the northern frontier. In addition, Lin Yuan had now set up teleportation formations in each of the Blackwater Army's Dragon King temples in the northern frontier. They did not even need to travel and could directly rush to the battlefield. It could be said that once they were free, they would be able to give the Shuangjian dynasty a fierce blow. In a conventional war, no one could win against Lin Yuan. It was because he was a cheat. The base of more than 400 million Joss flames was placed here. There were also the believers in the northern frontier and the believers of the gray-scaled flood dragon people providing Joss flames every day to support the extremely developed teleportation formations in the northern frontier. It was even more ridiculous than the time when Lin Yuan helped the monster beasts in the outer sea in the Endless Sea. Although Lin Yuan did not have the command this time with the Eye of God, after activating the shared command channel, it was directly connected to the Northern Frontier's Military Institute and the Strategic Analysis Department. Even the slightest abnormality would be known to everyone. Under this situation, the entire Northern Frontier seemed to be a single entity. Behind every single army were countless strategists providing strategies. Even if different armies were very far away from each other, they could still communicate tactics with each other. How could the flying dragon face rider lose? No, this seemed to be a poisonous milk. Lin Yuan spat twice in his heart. Then he twisted his body and flew out as if he did not recognize his own family. As for the cultivators of the Shuangjian dynasty, in general, powerful cultivators would not interfere with the secular affairs of the empire. Even the ruler of a country could only reach the heaven's starborder realm at most. How high could the cultivation of the officials and generals under him be? Even if there were one or two strange creatures, were the cultivators of the northern frontier all dead? The cultivators of the other empires were under the jurisdiction of the guardians of the heavenly gates, but who dared to interfere with the cultivators of the northern frontier? This was not the first time that Lin Yuan had flipped out. The last time, he had called for a creature from the outside world to kill the ancestor demons of the Endless Sea like they were dogs. This time, Lin Yuan had personally attacked and used a great divine ability that countless natives of the Tianwu world did not even dare to imagine. He had directly killed 2 demon kings and even refined their souls into the black water of the netherworld realm, causing them to never be able to reincarnate. Words like having one's soul destroyed and never being able to reincarnate were considered the highest punishments among the guardians of the heavenly gates. These so-called great cultivators did not have the courage to become enemies with Lin Yuan. After all, if they lost to someone else, they could think of a way to revive. If they really could not, they could reincarnate. However, if they lost to Lin Yuan, it would be fine if there was no enmity between them, but if there was a grudge between them, they would be ordered around even after they died. Chapter 10:23. Shunning City was the current capital of the Northern Frontier. It was also a pass between the Northern Frontier and the North. In other words, the border cities of the Shenwu dynasty were all passes. Over the years, Lei Qiuxing had been fighting with the demon beasts of the Hengduan mountain range for territory. Although from a military point of view, The existence of these passes ensured the safety of the northern frontier cities. From an economic point of view, the reason why the northern frontier was poor was mostly because of these passes. This point could be seen from the fact that ever since Lin Yuan took control of the northern frontier, the profits he obtained were so great that even the guards of the Heavenly Gate formation were envious. The reason why the rich countries that had been fighting all year round were not very rich was because of the lack of manpower. Every time there was a war, except for some so-called dangerous terrain that the militarists had to fight for, the territories that they fought for were basically places with abundant materials. As the saying goes, one relies on the mountain to make use of the mountain, and one relies on the river to make use of the water. If it were not for the demon beasts attacking the northern frontier, which was built close to the Hengduan mountain range, might have been even richer than some of the cities along the southern coast. As the largest source of demon beast materials and forest spiritual items, the northern frontier should have attracted countless merchant groups. However, looking at the northern frontier before, not a single decent merchant group was willing to establish a foothold here. On the contrary, the Demon Subduing Master Association, which fought against demon beasts, was extremely prosperous. It could even be mentioned in the same breath as the Xinwu dynasty's government office in the northern frontier, Zhanshan City, as the first pass of the Xinwu dynasty against the Hengduan mountain range, was also the route that the northern frontier army had to pass through. Originally, it was only established near the Hengduan mountain range to trade demon beast materials and spiritual items. Later, a large amount of resources accumulated through trade piled up and became the frontline pass of the Hengduan mountain range. But on the other hand, whether it was from the northern frontier or from other places, one would have to pass through many passes. Then, one would have to pay the entrance tax, lodging fee, and travel fee. After the transaction, one would have to pay the tax according to one's income. The tax rate of the Xinwu dynasty was not the kind of tax rate in Lin Yuan's previous life. For merchants, paying the tax once was equivalent to cutting their flesh with a knife. Not to mention that no matter what route one took, one would have to pay the tax at least 3 times. Therefore, after Lin Yuan took over the northern frontier, he did not hesitate to tear down those passes. After all, he did not have to worry about the demon beasts going against him. Then, he established the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce and included most of the transactions in his own hands. Firstly, monopolizing the market would allow him to reap a large amount of dividends. Secondly, once the market was saturated, he could adjust the price at any time without worrying about being hit hard by disrupting the market. This was the experience of his previous life. It was far from what the merchants of the feudal era could think of. Lei Qiusheng might have thought of it, but compared to doing business, he preferred to directly collect taxes. After all, the northern frontier was a place of exile in his eyes. Whether it was rich or poor did not have much to do with him. When passing by the ruins of Zhanshan City, Lin Yuan glanced at the area called Forest of Hungry Ghosts. A large number of Blackwater Army were stationed nearby. Some youths wearing the Northern Frontier Academy's uniform were walking and stopping under the guidance of their respective instructors. From time to time, they would bury a few items or draw formation patterns. This was also Lin Yuan's special request. After all, in the Forest of Hungry Ghosts, there was still the number 1 Azura, Liquor Sword Xian. Now he already knew what these so-called immortals were. As for whether Liquor Sword Xian would turn into an Azura after his death, or be turned into an Azura by the alien monster using the Elixir of Immortality, he had already made a decision. The so-called Elixir of Immortality was just a nether blood sea that was somewhat similar to the black water of the Nether Realm. The Nether River ancestor and the Azura tribe were all born from it. Lin Yuan had never seen the real Nether Blood Sea. Although he could use myths and legends for reference, what he had seen and heard during this period was still somewhat different from what really happened in the untainted world. After all, in the orthodox history of the untainted world that Hong Jun had fabricated, he would not explicitly tell the future generations that the so-called investiture of the gods was originally a farce. Its purpose was only to suppress the human race and humanity. Similarly, he would not clearly state why the Yellow Emperor was so cruel and why Red Cloud Taoist was so gullible, before seeing it with his own eyes, Lin Yuan would not make any certain judgment. But in a sense, the Nether Blood Sea was indeed a substance similar to the black water of the Nether Realm. Those immortals did not seem to be any different from the Nether River creatures created by the black water of the Nether Realm. It was just that Lin Yuan's Nether River creatures beside him were no different from when they were alive, except that their bodies were completely black. However, unless the immortals stored a large amount of the elixir of immortality, which contained an unknown active substance, they were like the zombies in the movies of his previous life. Other than being unable to be killed, there was really nothing to fear about such brainless monsters. Of course, Lin Yuan would not think that his black water of the Nether Realm was more powerful than the Nether Blood Sea. After all, other than the Sky Demon, the Nether River Patriarch had also used the Nether Blood Sea to create a powerful species like the Azura tribe. If it was the current Lin Yuan, he really would not be able to do the same thing. Well, the Azura tribe might not be the Nether River Patriarch's family tribe. After all, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva oversaw the Nether Blood Sea with the purpose of converting the Azura tribe into the Western sect. If they were a family tribe, the Western sect would not be able to do this no matter how powerful they were. Just like the gray-scaled Flood Dragon people under Lin Yuan's command. Even if they were Lin Yuan's followers, they would not easily betray Lin Yuan and switch to other faiths. On the other hand, these Sky Demon, which had never been recorded, would self-destruct once they betrayed Lin Yuan. They were more like a family tribe that had been created. After all, by spending a large amount of incense power, it was indeed possible to create a similar setting for a family tribe. And for an old monster like the Nether River Patriarch who had lived for who knows how many years, it was not surprising that he had so much incense power. There was an 80% chance that the Wine Sword Mystery was a natural Azura. Although the Wine Sword Mystery had been hiding his identity in the northern frontier in his later years, when the Thousand Swords dynasty was still around, this Sword King could indeed be said to have fought for his entire life. If not for the fact that the Wine Sword Mystery had placed all his attribute points on his personal strength and not on the path of commanding an army, the Azure River, Thousand Swords, and Frost Mirror Empires would not only have the 4 great war gods. For such a person to turn into an Azura after death, it was indeed in accordance with the rules of the Azura Dao. As for the fact that this world did not have the Azura Dao, however, the will of the Sky Martial World had always been trying to complete itself. The Heavenly Emperor and the Nether King had all been chosen, and the Human King was probably about to be chosen. When the 3 realms were established, it would be time to set up an existence similar to the Heavenly Court and the Underworld. Was it a rare thing to set up the 6 paths of reincarnation in advance? Therefore, the natural Azura Wine Sword Mystery, Lin Yuan, must take him under his command. Chapter 10:24. Although Lin Yuan did not want to become the god of the underworld of Tianwu world and be bound to this world, with the all-life scripture, if he could cultivate it, Lin Yuan would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the laws. Not to mention the world will. Even if the world will gave birth to the 3 Daos of heaven, earth, and man, it would not be able to control Lin Yuan's will. When the price was high enough, Lin Yuan would be able to do whatever he wanted in Tianwu world. Or to be more precise, modify and set up a portion of the laws. This was how cultivation was. Transforming one's demonic energy and astral energy into various special effects was actually using the power of the laws. Therefore, a great cultivator would be able to do whatever he wanted with a clap of his hands. After becoming a true god, Lin Yuan would go one step further and forcefully suppress the power of the laws. Compared to being silent, it was more like directly crippling one's technique and then relying on the strength of one's physical body. A great cultivator was destined to be inferior to a true god, not to mention a true god who could continue to use techniques. Below the true god, everyone was an ant, and the all-life scripture was a level higher than that of a true god. It was no longer purely controlling and suppressing the power of the laws. A true god, suppressing a great cultivator's power of the laws, had a time limit, but cultivating the all-life scripture directly changed it. The general idea was that if you were my enemy and I said you were a cripple, you would really become a cripple unless you also had the power to change the laws. In the great wasteland world, the all-life scripture was a straightforward way to become a saint. This was not some heavenly Tao saint, but a true primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal. The earth immortals, heavenly immortals, and true gods in the great wasteland world already had an endless lifespan. But after every era, they would have to go through 3 calamities and 9 disasters, as well as the 5 decay of heaven and man. In other words, they would have to undergo a tribulation every one of 1,399,860,000 years. If they could successfully pass the tribulation, they would be able to continue living freely in the new era. If they could not pass, the so-called immortal would not even have a corpse left behind. In the novels of his previous life, those who could leave behind a corpse after death were all world-shaking experts. This was not without reason. In other words, in the great desolate world, if one was not strong to a certain extent, leaving a complete corpse was an extravagant hope. The Heavenly Way sage entrusted his primordial spirit to the Heavenly Way. The so-called indestructible meant that he did not need to go through the tribulation at all. Even if he did not survive the tribulation, he could still reconstruct his primordial spirit from the Heavenly Way. Although he would lose his cultivation every time he reconstructed his primordial spirit, with the support of the Heavenly Way, he was not someone ordinary people in the untainted land could compete with. As for the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal, the so-called true sage, it was eternal. When the Heavenly Way sage left the great wasteland world, he would at most have the cultivation of a peak sage-to-be. However, no matter where the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal went to, he would be a primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal. Because at this stage of cultivation, instead of calling himself a sage, it was better to say that he had become a kind of existence like a rule, just like Pangu, who represented force, Yang Mei, who represented space and time. When one cultivated to the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal, he could transcend everything. He could change the timeline at will, reverse cause and effect, and tamper with the past and the future. In the novels of his previous life, those who fought across the long river of time were already the Almighty of the Almighty. However, this kind of operation was only one of the basic operations for the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal. However, there were not many existences who had attained the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal in the untainted land. According to the information shared by the system, Yang Mei was dissatisfied with Hongjun imprisoning all living beings in the untainted land and tried to reverse the long river of time. Then, Yang Mei and Hongjun had a great battle in the long river of time. However, in the end, no one gained the upper hand. Hongjun had countless magic treasures taken away, while Yang Mei was also seriously injured and had to escape from the untainted land. The battle between the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal had always been so simple and unpretentious. If they really fought, it would be in the long river of time. This was because the so-called past and future did not exist in the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal. No matter which timeline you went to, as long as you were against the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal, you would be facing the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly immortal you had seen. Hongjun had once said, "The small trend can be changed, but the big trend cannot be reversed." This sentence was a warning to all living beings in the untainted land. He did not mind those with evil intentions scheming under his nose. If they had a certain level of strength, Hongjun would not mind turning a blind eye and giving them better treatment. However, if they tried to overturn cause and effect and change the past to affect the present Hongjun, then sorry, only death awaited them. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's gaze shifted and a bitter smile appeared on his face. He thought to himself, "No wonder the system said that I was lucky." The Sutra of All Beings is indeed different from other heavenly level cultivation methods that lead directly to the path of true gods. This is simply a path to sainthood. If not for the jealousy of the heavens, Those who cultivate the Sutra of all beings are destined to attain the primordial chaos, grand, heavenly, immortal. However, the road had to be taken one step at a time, and the rice had to be eaten one bite at a time. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and turned to look at Li Zhongxing beside him. He said in a deep voice, "This king still has some matters to settle. Continue to lead the army forward. If you encounter the demonic beasts of the Hengduan mountain range, directly state the purpose of this king's visit. After that, the entire army will move out and directly go to the demonic beast imperial court to wait for this king's arrival." Understood? Li Zhongxing cupped his fists and responded in a deep voice. In fact, the path into the Hengduan mountain range was not dangerous. After all, after leaving the boundary of mountain-blocking city, they would enter the demonic beast forest. The demonic beasts living in this forest were all spirit-awakening realm demonic beasts and wild beasts that could not even be considered demonic beasts. Not to mention the current Northern Frontier Army. Even if he was alone, he could easily slaughter all the creatures in this forest. After passing through the demonic beast forest and entering the Hengduan mountain range, not long after, they would arrive at the Stoneclaw Forest and Scarlet Flame Swamp. These two areas had the Northern Frontier's flag. According to the information provided by the caravan members, Lin Yuan's territory in the Hengduan mountain range was fine. After all, even if they wanted to snatch the position of Beast Lord, the most they could do was to seal off Lin Yuan's path into the Hengduan mountain range. As for touching Lin Yuan's territory in the Hengduan mountain range, that was not too far away. That was equivalent to giving Lin Yuan a slap in the face. Fighting for the position of Beast Lord was one thing, but if you touched someone else's territory, it would be a blood feud that would not end until one side was dead. Just like when Lin Yuan attacked the Scarlet Flame Swamp, he directly killed the Scarlet Flame Crocodile King. This was considered normal in the Hengduan mountain range. Unless the other side had a strong background, a battle involving territory would only end when one side was completely annihilated. After leaving the Northern Frontier Army, Lin Yuan directly twisted his flood dragon body and rushed toward the hungry ghost forest. Chapter 10:25. Originally, he did not want to become the god of the underworld because he would be bound by the will of the world. He would not be able to go to the untainted world, let alone return to his previous world. But with the way to become a saint, everything was different. Wouldn't it be better to be one with the Tao and dominate the cycle of reincarnation? And from another point of view, Lin Yuan was quite satisfied with the system of the god of the underworld. If he could find the location of his previous world, Lin Yuan could merge the two worlds. Anyway, he did not know if the previous world was caused by the system or if it was truly exhausted of spiritual qi. Ever since Lin Yuan could remember, it had been in a period of absolute isolation. Not to mention true gods, there were not even many mortals with cultivation. By merging the two worlds, Lin Yuan could directly dominate the underworld. It was not a big deal to break some taboos. At that time, even if he could not directly revive his loved ones, he could arrange a better family in the next life. Of course, the prerequisite was that Lin Yuan could be one with the Tao and completely control the underworld. Empress Pingxin learned a lesson from the mistakes of Lin Yuan. The will of the world was definitely not as ambitious as Hongjun. But from another point of view, the three Daos of heaven, earth, and man were all derived from the will of the world. Even if Lin Yuan was one with the Tao and did not treat the people of the Tianwu world as slaves and prisoners like Hongjun, the will of the world would not like him. Just in case, it was not wrong to have all 9 Daos of the Tao realm in his hands. Change the formation from a trapping formation to a killing formation. When this king comes out, directly activate the formation and clean up all the hungry ghosts. Lin Yuan flew over, his voice loud and clear. In an instant, it was transmitted to the ears of the nearby academy disciples and the Blackwater army. At the same time, a red light flashed rapidly in the forest of hungry ghosts. When the blood light stopped, hundreds of hungry ghosts' corpses fell down. The wounds on these corpses did not begin to heal. The wounds that were cut by sharp weapons were constantly wriggling with blood flames. As the blood flames grew stronger, the bodies of the hungry ghosts began to gradually wither. Then, the bloody light materialized into the figure of a young man in his 20s. He had delicate features, and one could vaguely see the graceful bearing of Jiao Jianxian when he was young. He wore a set of blood-red armor, and there was a bulging sphere on his chest. That sphere slowly opened, and it was actually a huge eye with white eyes and black pupils that were filled with blood vessels. As the huge eye opened, the blood flames on the bodies of the hungry ghosts became even more vigorous. After a moment, the hungry ghosts were all turned into ashes. Streaks of gloomy gray gas appeared, and like a torrential sea, they all entered the huge eye. At this time, the aura on Jiao Jinchuan's body had clearly become stronger. The Azura tribe had a very strange movement. The male Azura were extremely ugly, and it could be said that they were all deformed. The most common form was Neza, who was born as an Azura with 3 heads and 6 arms, or 4 eyes and 4 arms. There were even more terrifying existences with 9 heads and 1,000 eyes and 8 legs and 990 arms. Someone like Jiao Jianxian, who retained his previous appearance, with his torso turned into armor and a pair of huge eyes on his chest, was actually considered a rare handsome man in the entire Azura tribe. However, this appearance would still give people a strange and evil feeling. Kill the heavens, kill the earth, kill all living beings. Using killing to prove one's Tao, it is indeed not a bluff. Lin Yuan's voice suddenly sounded. The huge eye on Jiao Jinchuan's chest turned slightly, and his body turned, facing Lin Yuan, who suddenly appeared behind him. His right arm shook, and it actually turned into a sharp sword. Its texture was like a bone, but it was wrapped with a large amount of black and red demonic qi and blood qi. Just this point was enough for Lin Yuan to raise his attention to deal with it. The Azura demonic qi entering the body was not a joke. After being corroded by the Azura demonic qi, the quality of one's body would be greatly improved, and all kinds of cultivation techniques would be like having the help of the gods. It sounded good, but the more serious the corrosion of the Azura demonic qi was, the more distorted and deformed the person would gradually transform from the original species into the Azura tribe. It was even more ferocious and terrifying than the Azura tribe that was born normally. There was no rationality to speak of, and only endless killing intent and an unending desire to fight remained in their minds. More importantly, when the Azura demonic qi entered the body, there was no way to treat it. According to the teachings of Buddhism, if one wanted to treat the Azura demonic qi entering the body, one had to put down the butcher's knife, eat vegetarian, and pray to Buddha. In other words, one had to cultivate one's body and mind to suppress the killing intent and desire to fight in one's heart. Moreover, it was treating the symptoms and not the root cause. The so-called put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha was a lie. Compared to a butcher who slaughtered countless living beings and could become a Buddha after putting down the butcher's knife, it was better to say that the butcher's knife that was controlled by someone could become a Buddha. How could the karma be offset by turning back from the wrong path? Even if one cultivated one's body and mind to suppress the Azura demonic qi, as time passed, the corrosion would become more and more serious. Moreover, in this life, one absolutely could not kill anymore. Otherwise, once the originally suppressed Azura demonic qi erupted, it would be uncontrollable. Lin Yuan did not want to try whether his dragon scales could withstand Jiao Jinchuan's sword, nor did he want to try whether he could suppress the Azura demonic qi that could turn people into demons. Because in history, there was a very typical example. The Prince of Lanling, Gao Changgong, was one of the 4 most beautiful men. Although he was a famous general in history, he was ridiculed by the enemy because of his handsome appearance when he joined the army in his early years. Even the soldiers under his command were dissatisfied with him, so he made himself a mask that looked like an evil ghost. After putting on the mask, he became the Prince of Lanling, who was feared by the enemy. However, as time passed, even if he took off the mask, he could no longer be the cultured, refined, and well-educated gentleman he used to be. He had completely turned into a ruthless slaughterer on the battlefield. This was also a lesson learned from the transformation of a human into a Shura. Compared to Lin Yuan's scruples, Zhou Jianxian was obviously much more straightforward. Since he had his own consciousness, he had been wandering in the hungry ghost forest, acting according to his obsession when he was alive, constantly killing the hungry ghosts lurking in this dense forest. Azura did not have the concept of cultivation. The only way for Azura to become stronger was to rely on killing, just like Lin Yuan killing other creatures and extracting attribute points through the system. It was just that the efficiency of Azura becoming stronger through killing was very low, and the side effects were very great. Now, when he killed the hungry ghosts, it was very difficult for him to improve himself. In other words, the hungry ghosts that were becoming more and more difficult to support under his hands could no longer satisfy his growing desire to fight because of the side effects. If it was not for his obsession when he was alive that was strong to a certain extent, he would have left the hungry ghost forest long ago and hunted the cultivators in the northern frontier. Chapter 10:26. However, the existence of a strong obsession in his life. Although the wine sword Mysterious missed the best period of development in the chaos of the northern frontier, it was not completely without benefits. At least at this time, there was no cultivation force in the northern frontier who had an unresolvable blood feud with him. This further simplified what Lin Yuan needed to do after subduing him. Moreover, Shura was an immortal existence in the Shura realm. Even if he was beaten to a pulp, he could be resurrected with the help of the will of the Shura realm. Otherwise, a group of Shura with an extremely strong desire to fight would be left with only a few after a long time. However, the Shura outside the Shura realm did not have such an immortal body. In the northern frontier, a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons, if one was unlucky, one might encounter some monsters. If he had not been staying in the hungry ghost forest, it was really hard to say who would hunt who. However, during this period of time in the hungry ghost forest, the wine sword Mysterious had indeed laid a good foundation. At least he could kill hundreds of hungry ghosts in an instant. He definitely could not do it when he was alive. It was not that the wine sword Mysterious was much stronger than when he was alive. The main reason was that the wine sword Mysterious was now much younger. There was a saying in Lin Yuan's previous life, "Random fists can kill the old master." Even if it was another world, this sentence was also applicable. Not to mention mortals, even if the cultivator, after a certain age, even if the lifespan still had hundreds of years, the body organs would also age to a certain extent. If there was a negative state such as internal injury, poisoning, and so on, this aging would be even more serious. The wine sword Mysterious had honed his swordsmanship to a very strong level. Although he had not stepped into the Kongming realm, he could kill the cultivator who was also at the peak of the Heaven Dipper realm. At most, he only needed to use 5 swords. And the physical fitness of the wine sword Mysterious when he was alive, if he went all out, he would use 30 swords at most, and his blood would decline and his aura would be exhausted. It was estimated that this was also the reason why the wine sword Mysterious was trapped in the hungry ghost forest. No matter how high the explosion and damage were, it could not stop your opponent from being killed at all, right? Before the Golden Immortal, even if the cultivator had the same lifespan as the heaven and earth, there was the 5 decay of celestial being, let alone the Heaven Dipper realm cultivator, whose lifespan was only a few hundred years. The young wine sword Mysterious could undoubtedly explode more terrifying damage, and the time he could fight would last for a long time. Therefore, it would be very troublesome. Lin Yuan's gaze turned slightly, and when it landed on Wine Sword Profound, he clearly saw greed from the huge eyeball on his chest. The Tao of Azura was the Tao of killing the heaven, killing the earth, and killing all living beings. This was the great wish that the old ancestor of the Nether River had set when he created the Azura sect. Therefore, even when he saw Lin Yuan, who was the god of the underworld, Wine Sword Xian did not show any reverence. Instead, he looked at Lin Yuan as if he was looking at a prey. This was because Wine Sword Xian had not recovered much of his intelligence and was still in the stage of acting on instinct. He subconsciously thought that as long as he killed Lin Yuan, he would be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. If it were any other creature, they might have to consider whether or not they were a match for Lin Yuan, or whether or not they could take all of the rewards after killing Lin Yuan. But the Azura race's temperament was still there. You want to kill me? Just do it. Whoosh! A sharp sound of breaking through the air rang in his ears. In Lin Yuan's sight, Wine Sword Mysterious suddenly disappeared. After a moment, a cold light appeared in Lin Yuan's sight. The bone sword easily penetrated Lin Yuan's head, but Wine Sword Mysterious' face did not show the slightest joy. Instead, he waved the bone sword and began to look at the surrounding jungle with vigilance. At this time, the afterimage that Lin Yuan left on the spot slowly dissipated. Even though Happy was not sure what kind of Azura Wine Sword Enigma had transformed into, based on the previous few encounters, Wine Sword Enigma's awakened ability should be extreme speed. Moreover, it was not the extreme speed of a certain sword master, but will, instant, and sword arrival. As an assassin-type character with extremely strong, explosive power, awakening such a talent ability was simply a good start. Coupled with the Azura demon energy contained in the bone sword, even if it could not kill the enemy in one hit, it could still seriously injure the enemy. Or, even if it was only a slight injury, it was equivalent to victory, because the Azura demon energy would constantly corrode the opponent, turning the opponent into a half Azura state that only knew how to kill. In a sense, this could also be considered as killing the opponent. But there was obviously a difference between extreme speed and extreme speed. It was just like the speed competition between the two superheroes in a certain manga adaptation of a movie in Lin Yuan's previous life. Who was faster, the Flash or Superman? Normally, the fully developed Superman would definitely not be as fast as the Flash, who put all his attribute points into speed, but the comparison was also very obvious. The ordinary Superman's speed was inferior to the Flash, but the Silver Super could easily break the space-time barrier. Its speed was not comparable to the Flash. The current Lin Yuan and Wine Sword Mysterious were like the difference between the Silver Super and the Flash. Lin Yuan did not deny that Wine Sword Mysterious' extreme speed talent was very fast, but after all, there was almost a whole realm gap here. If it was purely comparing speed, coupled with the effect of the Eye of God, Wine Sword Mysterious' extreme speed stab in Lin Yuan's eyes was almost the same as a movie scene that was slowed down by 0.25 times. Lin Yuan suddenly appeared behind Wine Sword Mysterious. His eyes were cold, sea-suppressing tail. As the Black Flood Dragon tail smashed on the body of the Wine Sword Mystic, a terrifying force suddenly leaked out. The basic attributes of the desolate demon realm, plus the true damage attached to the tail of the sea-suppressing beast, showed an extremely explosive visual effect. Even the Wine Sword Mystic, who was much stronger than the ordinary Heaven Dipper realm, was almost torn apart by Lin Yuan's blow. The huge eyeball on his chest was full of blood, as if it was going to burst at any time. Boom! Wine Sword Mysterious, who was sent flying, broke hundreds of trees in a row, almost piercing through dozens of miles of woodland. However, before Wine Sword Mysterious landed, his body exploded into a cloud of blood mist in midair. When the blood mist dissipated, a huge Dharma image of a few hundred feet appeared. It was a huge figure that sat cross-legged on the ground. The armor-like red skin did not change, but Wine Sword Mysterious' face was now covered with a pitch-black cuticle. Scarlet eyes opened from the cuticle one after another. Just a rough look. There were no less than 1,000 of them. Before the change was over, Wine Sword Mysterious' Dharma idol changed again. The red skin on his arms began to bulge out one by one, and as the flesh ball was broken open, an incomparably thick arm grew out. Adding the two sides together, there were almost 1,000 hands. 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes, still only in Heaven Dipper realm, but he can manifest the image of Azura King. Should I say that he is worthy of being one? Lin Yuan secretly clicked his tongue. Chapter 10:27. Thousands of arms waved at will, and bone weapons began to gradually appear. Lin Yuan could even see the flesh fragments attached to those weapons. But what was more eye-catching was the surging Azura demonic energy near the wind blades of those weapons. At this moment, the wine sword mystery looked extremely evil and treacherous. He's more powerful than I thought. It seems that he's really tricky. Lin Yuan's blue-white vertical pupils rolled slightly, and he smiled bitterly. When he launched the sea-suppressing tail, Lin Yuan was actually still hesitating. Even though Wine Sword Mystery became much younger after transforming into an Azura, he was just a Heaven Gang realm cultivator. However, the Taoist master of the Azura Dao was destined to enjoy the status of an Earth Sage. If he accidentally killed Wine Sword Mystery, where could he find a second Azura? Where could he create a stage for him to quickly improve his ability? But since he had launched the skill, there was no room for mercy. So Lin Yuan was betting that Wine Sword Mystery, the first natural Azura in the Heaven Martial world, was powerful enough. After all, he was bound to fight with him. Even if his realm was higher than his, it was easy for him to fail miserably and be controlled by Wine Sword Mystery. But he didn't expect that Wine Sword Mystery would turn around and give him such a huge surprise, or rather, a huge shock. Lin Yuan had not seen any weak creatures in the Untainted Land. Even Hamba, Luo Yu, Fox Demon, and the like were actually some famous fierce characters in the Untainted Land. Wine Sword Mystery left his name in such a cruel world. No matter how he thought about it, he would not be easy to deal with. But the key of the Untainted Land was there, which was far from a spirit space like the Heaven Martial world. Not to mention the manifestation of the rules, like the 3,000 ancient demon gods. Even ordinary natural living beings had the cultivation not inferior to true gods when they were born. Even the weakest human race in the Untainted Land at that time could have the cultivation of a celestial immortal after a little serious cultivation. Heaven Gang realm cultivators in the Untainted Land were most likely to be crushed like ants. But what about Wine Sword Mystery? Not only did this fellow withstand the full-force attack of Lin Yuan, who was at the 8th level of the Desolate Demon Realm, but what was even more terrifying was that he only became serious after the pain and directly revealed his Azura clan Dharma idol. He was hundreds of meters tall, had 1,000 hands and eyes, and this was not something that those green-faced, fierce-looking Azuras could compare to. This is the Azura King. The huge eye on Zhou Jinchuan's chest turned, and thousands of arms holding bone weapons heavily smashed towards Lin Yuan. The Azura demonic chi seemed to have completely replaced the original gang chi. It whistled around the bone weapons, and terrifying sonic booms rang out continuously. At this moment, Lin Yuan even felt that the entire world was shaking. The surrounding air was constantly being compressed. Even Lin Yuan felt as if he had fallen into a swamp and was unable to move. I can't dodge it. Lin Yuan quickly made a judgment. Although he could still move, in this situation where his speed was slowed down countless times, no matter how hard he tried, he could not escape the attack range of these 1,000 bone weapons. He could only take it head-on. Lin Yuan's eyes turned slightly, and endless nether realm black water gushed out from the gaps of his scales. When it fell to the ground, it did not turn into ferocious nether river creatures. Instead, it remained liquid and gradually solidified, turning into weapons made of black ice. At first glance, it seemed that they were not much smaller than those bone weapons. Although he could not mobilize the Wei River for his own use from far away like Luo Yu, as the god in charge of the Nether River, Lin Yuan could turn his demon power and the power of incense into nether realm black water at any time, and he could also exert the power of the King of Water and the invisible ice. As for using the nether river creatures to block the attack, that kind of behavior seemed to be no different from that of the supporting role in novels. As a Azura who relied on killing to become stronger, no matter what it was, as long as it could be killed, it could be turned into nourishment. Those hungry ghosts transformed from the nether realm blood sea were still as weak as ordinary creatures in the hands of Zhou Jinxian, and there was no chance for them to be reborn. If it were Lin Yuan's nether river creatures, there would be no change. Facing the Azura alone was actually a good tactic. While fighting, he gave experience to the Azura. How retarded must one be to do such a thing? Bang! 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 As the bone weapon and the black ice weapon collided, the sound of metal hitting metal rang out continuously. The terrifying airwaves caused by the collision of the Azura demon chi and the death chi of the Nether River also spread in all directions. In an instant, the surrounding plants withered and withered. Even if a Heaven Gang realm cultivator was here, a large amount of vitality would be instantly sucked away, and he would become an old man. Buzz! As the two fought more and more, the surrounding space barrier could no longer bear the burden and suddenly burst open. A large amount of the death chi of the Nether River and the Azura demon chi leaked out, and it immediately attracted the attention of the big shots in the Sea of Misery. A kind-looking old man with white hair and a white beard and dressed in green was slightly stunned. He waved his hand, and the ripples caused by the spatial fluctuations appeared in the Sea of Misery, directly crushing tens of thousands of sky demon. Only then did he let out a soft cry of surprise and turn to look at the extremely weak world that even his incarnation could not bear. Natural Azura? Interesting. The old ancestor of Yang Mei stroked his beard with one hand, and his eyes turned slightly. He smiled and said, "I thought this kid was just ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth. I didn't expect that his ambition is so big. Since that's the case, let me help you." As soon as he finished speaking, the old ancestor of Yang Mei flicked his right hand, and a strand of hair leisurely floated down leisurely. It immediately turned into a sharp green light and swept into the spatial crack of the sky martial world. To be honest, the old ancestor of Yang Mei was a very casual existence. Not everything was worth his attention. Even if someone offended the old ancestor of Yang Mei for some kind of opportunity, as long as it was based on oneself, he could laugh and just say that it was fate and would not make a fuss about it. So far, there were not many existences that had truly angered the old ancestor of Yang Mei. The one ranked first was Hong Jun, who had integrated with the Way of Heaven. But to be honest, the old ancestor of Yang Mei was stronger than Hong Jun in both cultivation and shrewdness. Even if Hong Jun had integrated with the Way of Heaven and fought with the old ancestor of Yang Mei in the long river of time, both of them would have suffered losses. If the old ancestor of Yang Mei was as ambitious as Hong Jun, the matter of integrating with the Way of Heaven and dominating the untainted land would not have been Hong Jun's turn at all. Therefore, when Lin Yuan did not give him face, he was only slightly angry, but far from the point where he had to kill Lin Yuan. Now that he had seen something interesting, he naturally would not turn a blind eye to it. Chapter 10:28. On the other side, Lin Yuan, who was in the midst of a fierce battle with the Azura King's Dharma form, suddenly shifted his gaze. This was because he had already seen an incomparably sharp green light suddenly sweep out from the crack in space. With his dynamic vision, he naturally could clearly see what that green light was. A verdant willow branch. The Patriarch of Yang Mei had made his move. F***CK. Lin Yuan's heart suddenly sank. He had yet to see the Patriarch of Yang Mei with his own eyes, so naturally, he did not know what kind of temperament the Patriarch of Yang Mei had. Although from the perspective of the factions, both sides were comrades in the fight against Hong Jun, but even as a system host, Lin Yuan did not feel that the other hosts were necessarily harmonious and friendly. The Eldritch world was originally a boundless world. Over the years, Hong Jun had conquered countless worlds and conquered countless worlds. Just the Heavenly Court alone had 33 heavens. But then again, even if there were countless creatures in the Eldritch world, only a handful could become experts, and only a few could reach the pinnacle. It was true that the system was very powerful, but in the end, it was only the origin of the Eldritch world's heavenly Tao, and the kind that was incomplete. How far could one reach by relying on the system's power? Unless one was as unbelievably lucky as Lin Yuan and did not grow step by step according to the system's arrangements, and even obtain the universal scripture, which could lead one directly to the path of chaos zenith heaven. Otherwise, according to the system's arrangements, one could only reach the position of a heavenly Tao sage at the extreme. Moreover, there was a limit to the heavens, and the karma of the 9 heavenly Tao sages were right there. How powerful would one have to be able to kill Hongjun and dethrone the other 8 heavenly Tao sages? Even if one could really reach that step, but there were still more than 7,000 system hosts. More than 7,000 people fighting for the karma of the 9 heavenly Tao sages, who could guarantee that they would succeed. There were some things that couldn't be thought too far ahead. Just by thinking about it a little, one could feel that the future would be filled with bloodshed. Similarly, they were basically all existences that fought against Hongjun. Primitive bigwigs such as sect leader Tongtian and the Patriarch of Yang may had the same purpose as the system, but they each had their own interests. How much kindness could you expect from those primitive bigwigs when their own people would kill each other? In addition, the appearance of the 2 demon foxes from before had angered Lin Yuan due to their natural transformation. Even though they could suppress their inner demons, they did not hold back in their anger. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not even need to think about it to know that he had definitely offended the Patriarch of Yang Mei. He had forgotten about this when he was fighting with Wine Sword Mystery. The Patriarch of Yang Mei had not left yet. The willow branch swayed slightly in midair, and suddenly, a green light shone brightly. This time, even Lin Yuan could not see what the willow branch looked like. A moment later, the entire Starved Ghost forest was enveloped by the green light, and the terrifying suppression brought by the Azura King's Dharma form disappeared instantly. Is this helping me? Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. He turned his head and looked at the green light not far behind him. He had a vague feeling. The green light was like the rain curtain that he had created with the power of incense. As long as he did not want to, no one could enter or leave, unless the other party was willing to use the power of incense to open a temporary door. In other words, this Starved Ghost forest had been completely isolated by the willow branch into an independent small world. At this moment, it was like an extremely bloody arena. Unless the Patriarch of Yang Mei withdrew his divine power, no one could leave this space. This is a primordial chaos zenith heaven, as expected of a mighty person who had proven a certain law. Even if they left the chaos world, they could still change a world into what they wanted with a wave of their hand. The so-called will of the world was nothing in front of powerful beings like them. While he did not know why the Patriarch of Yang Mei would help him at this time, Lin Yuan's thoughts turned slightly, and his eyes flashed with joy. The Azura race was bloodthirsty, but the Azura race were not fools. After the primordial world had developed for countless years, the Azura race that the Nether River Patriarch had created was no longer the original composition. Countless generals and heroes had fought in the mortal world, and many of them had been received into the Azura realm after death. Could these people who had left their mark in history be fools? To give an example, the calm martial lord of the Qin, Bai Qi, had killed his entire life and was called the god of killing. The calm martial lord of the Zhao country, Li Mu, was often called the turtle general, but when he moved, he almost destroyed the Donghu race. The Azura race's desire to fight was strong, but their battle intelligence was not fake. Do not think that facing the Azura race was a fight to the death. When the Azura race thought that he was not your match, he would still do things like running away. Unless in the Azura realm, everyone had an undying body, then naturally it was a fight to the death. The old ancestor of the Yang Mei had acted to isolate this space. First, it gave Lin Yuan a chance to use the tiger skin. After all, until now, Lin Yuan had already had powerful existences that surpassed the understanding of the natives of the Tianwu world. And this time, the old ancestor of the Yang Mei had acted to isolate heaven and earth. The experts of the outside world naturally could not see what was happening here. Sometimes, once people started to imagine things, it was easy for them to attack themselves. Second, by isolating heaven and earth. Even if Zhou Jinxian had not been serious before, now that he had erupted with an even more terrifying speed, he would not be able to escape this battlefield. Lin Yuan did not need to worry that Zhou Jinxian would run away. Now that heaven and earth are isolated, even if you have thousands of methods, you can only fight with me here. However, the difference in strength between you and me is huge, like comparing a firefly to the moon. You are a natural Azura. You should be the Azura Dowlord under this king. If you submit to this king can give you the great way to become a saint. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and did not rush to attack. Instead, he stared at Jiu Jinxian with shining eyes. Although he had some plans, he was not sure whether he could really merge with the Great Way. If he could not do it, he would not take the risk. Otherwise, it would be bad if he suffered a loss like Hutu. After all, Hutu was tricked by Hongjun and turned into samsara. She not only tricked herself, but also the whole Wu tribe. In the untainted world, the war between the Wu tribe and the demon tribe had seriously injured the demon tribe. Even the ancient demon court had been destroyed. Eastern Emperor Tai and Emperor Jun had suffered losses. Even the cosmic stars formation had been broken. At the end of the war, the pillar of heaven had collapsed. Even the untainted world had been shattered. However, in this cultivation tribulation, neither the Wu tribe nor the demon tribe had gained any advantage. On the contrary, the human tribe had surpassed them and opened the era of 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Chapter 10:29. If the 12 ancestors of sorcery were all present, they could set up the 12 sky demon divine formation and condense the real body of Pangu. Everyone below the sage level would be invincible. Even the demon race would not be able to gain any advantage, not to mention the human race, who were just food to the other races in the untainted land. Even if they were injured, they would not be sacrificed to the human race. The entire sorcerer race had even left the stage of the untainted land. The remaining sorcerer race could only hide in the netherworld and seek protection from Empress Pingxin. As for the calamity of the great war between sorcerer and demon, it was not only the human race that benefited. In addition to the beginning of the era of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, even Hongjuan's disciple, Sanqing, had created his own sect. The rise of the Ren sect, the Jie sect, and the Chan sect had started the Xianmen era, where Hongjun was respected. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan broke out in a cold sweat. Hongjuan's plan was too terrifying. When he was not powerful enough, he could sit back and watch the sorcerer and demon race fight. At the same time, he secretly set up a trap and reaped the benefits. Although he promoted the human race, he suppressed the Tao. He shared the Tao of heaven with the 3 sovereigns and suppressed the emergence of the Tao of humanity. When the other 2 Tao were completely suppressed, he revealed his fangs. He merged with the Tao of heaven and became the supreme ruler of the untainted land. This was not the end. After all, in the eyes of the sorcerer race, there was no difference between the human race and the demon race. After all, Goddess Nviwa was the sage of the demon race. Although the human race that she created did not get along well with the demon race, in the eyes of the sorcerer race, there were people who deserved to be killed. Later on, Qiyu led an army to suppress the Yin Emperor and cause chaos in the world. The Yellow Emperor took advantage of the situation and killed Qiyu at the Green Mountains, becoming the Yellow Emperor Xin Yuan. Lin Yuan was confused. Lin Yuan suddenly paused. Killed Qiyu at the Green Mountains? Why the Green Mountains? The Yellow Emperor and Qiyu had their last battle at the Green Mountains. After that battle, the Green Mountains were destroyed. Although Green Hill was like a paradise, it was still a demonic country. Even if the people of Green Hill stood aloof from worldly affairs, the Great Witch-Demon War was a calamity that ran through the entire Eldritch world. Logically speaking, as long as they were in the calamity, they would not be spared. Didn't you see that the Jie sect, which was known as the 10,000 Immortals, was annihilated in the God Investiture Tribulation? Only the incongruent Divine Mother, who was not contaminated by the Tribulation aura, survived. No matter how strong the Qing Qiu demons were, could they be stronger than Jie school? Therefore, the ancestors of the Qing Qiu tribe must have participated in the Great Witch Demon War. Qiyu had no reason to flee to the Qing Qiu tribe because he was a member of the Witch tribe. With this innate factor, the Qin tribe could not possibly have a good impression of him, much less help him. Therefore, Qi could only have been chased all the way by the Yellow Emperor. Then, the question was, why did the Yellow Emperor set the location of the final battle at the Qin tribe? Furthermore, the battle between the two armies had directly destroyed the Qin tribe. Emperor Huang Xianyuan became Guang Qingzi's disciple. Guang Qingzi was one of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. What did the heavenly primogenitor mean? No, it was Hongjuan's idea. Then, what did the Qin tribe have to be targeted by the Tao ancestor Hongjun? At this time, Hongjun should still be setting up. It was because of the destruction of the Qin tribe that the Su clan, one of the Qin tribe's bloodline, hated the Yellow Emperor. However, the Yellow Emperor was not in existence that the Su clan could charm. When Su Daji cultivated into a nine-tailed fox, the human king was already DXIN. The God investiture tribulation had already been set up during the period of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. But why the Qin tribe? Why the fox tribe? Was it because the fox tribe was good-looking and naturally charming? Bullshit. There were many races in the Eldritch world that were born good-looking. Which of the mermaids in the sea and the flower demons in the deep mountains was worse than the fox tribe? Therefore, the Qin tribe was targeted because there was an existence behind them that Hongjun wanted to deal with. The 2 fox demons of the Chungha clan and Su clan said that they were backed by the patriarch Yang Mei, while the Su clan was a branch of the Qin tribe. Furthermore, the patriarch Yang Mei had always kept a low profile. Why did he have a grudge with Hongjun? Therefore, the patriarch Yang Mei was the mighty figure behind the Qin tribe? Yes, that should be the case. The Qin kingdom was a place that stood aloof from worldly affairs. There were many races that could not be seen in the outside world. Looking at the overall situation, it was after the Great War between the shamans and demons, the era of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. The various vassals of the human race were fighting, the remnants of the human race and the demon race were fighting, and the 3 religions were fighting for Taoist orthodoxy. It could be said that the entire Eldritch world was filled with the flames of war. Why was the Qin kingdom standing aloof from worldly affairs? That was because they were backed by a mighty figure that could reach the heavens, a mighty figure that all the experts of the time feared. It was terrifying to think about. More importantly, he was now targeted by Hongjun. Would this mighty figure, who had almost run through the entire history of the Eldritch world, who could trample countless outstanding figures of the Eldritch world under his feet, end things so hastily? Was it really as simple as sending down a consciousness projection and leaving when he saw that he could not kill him? You want me to submit to you? Are you worthy? While Lin Yuan was brainstorming, the wine-sword mystic who had turned into an Azura king snorted. As a natural Azura, although the wine-sword mystic did not have the wisdom of those peerless, ruthless people in the history of Lin Yuan's previous life who were led into the Azura realm after death, as the Sword King of the 10,000 Swords dynasty, he still retained his pride even without the memories of his life. What was a sword? It would rather break than bend. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Lin Yuan muttered. The next moment, the pseudo-law phenomenon of heaven and earth was launched, revealing a body that was more than 3,000 feet long. The rich and majestic demon aura almost formed a gray cloud above his head. The aura of the 8th level of the desolate demon realm broke out, and it pressed down on the wine-sword mystery like a mountain. The wine-sword mystic roared, and his figure changed again. He expanded by more than 100 times. As the Azura demon aura surged, a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood was formed behind him. That was the scene of hundreds of thousands of troops of the Xinwu dynasty besieging his fief after Lei Qiuxing usurped the throne. In that battle, blood flowed like a river. Although he did not save anything in the end, for example, the Xinwu dynasty still replaced the 10,000 Swords dynasty, and his fief was also broken by the army of the Xinwu dynasty. The generals under Lei Qiuxing's command were blocked for too long, and they ordered a massacre for 3 days out of anger. Even if he had no memories of his life, he still felt the monstrous anger in his heart when the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood appeared. Kill! 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 It was like the ravings in a dream, and then it was like the sound of a great bell. At the same time, the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood behind the wine sword mystic gradually solidified, and the monstrous killing intent on his body continued to rise. Thousands of arms gradually retracted into his body. At this moment, the wine sword mystic still looked deformed, but compared with the Azura, he looked more like the titans who could launch the twilight of the gods in Lin Yuan's previous life. Chapter 1030. His growth speed is very fast. If I nurture him well, I'm afraid he will become the peak existence of Sky Martial World before I can create the tunnel. With the completion of the 3 realms and 6 Dao, his future will not stop at this. Lin Yuan's eyes moved slightly, secretly calculating in his heart. When he first saw the wine sword mystery, the other party didn't seem to have any spiritual wisdom. He just subconsciously wanted to kill, but he was still afraid of a powerful existence like the Hitorigami and fled. When Lin Yuan saw him this time, although he still retained the desire to kill, he knew to hide his strength and fight with Lin Yuan. If 2 existences with a small gap in cultivation level fight, waiting for the other party to adapt to the rhythm of the battle, the party hiding his strength suddenly erupts with all his strength, which is enough to complete a surprise kill. And now, he could even open his mouth to communicate with him. This guy's growth speed was very fast. In truth, Lin Yuan did not think much of the natives of Sky Martial World. So even if there were people like Lei Qiuxing and Yin Xingqi who could be called outstanding existences, Lin Yuan still focused on nurturing young people. After all, loyalty was one aspect, and vision was another. The natives of Sky Martial World were not easy to deal with, especially the existences of the Heavenly Gate Protectors. To be able to break through to the Void Realm, or even higher, these natives were truly amazing. After all, he was clear about his own situation. Although Lin Yuan did not grow according to the system's plan, his own talent was there. If not for the existence of the system, not to mention stepping into the desolate demon realm in 3 years, Lin Yuan might not even be able to successfully awaken his spirit in these 3 years. But what determined a person's future was not as simple as talent. Broadening one's horizons was equally important. The natives of the Heaven Gate Protectors weren't like their seniors and outstanding peers. They didn't leave the Heaven Martial World for the sake of pursuing a higher realm. Instead, they chose to rule over a small world. This wasn't because they were like those scheming prehistoric creatures, but because they wanted to obtain the secrets of the Heaven Martial World. It was because they were afraid. They were afraid that if they went to a foreign world, the strength that they were so proud of would be at the bottom, and they would lose their current status and wealth. Anyway, if they stayed in Sky Martial World, they could rely on the characteristics of the power of incense, and they could live forever. Why would they take the risk? As soon as that thought appeared in their minds, their paths were cut off. Even if the Martial Heaven world was repaired in the future, these experts who stood at the peak of the world wouldn't have any advantage. Instead, they would quickly fall out of line with the rest of the world. They would go from being almighty experts to trash that no one cared about. Lin Yuan swung his dragon tail, and the demonic cloud above his head circulated. In an instant, countless rays of black light were cast down, transforming the demonic power into the black water of the netherworld realm to rain. It seemed harmless, but the threat hidden in the strands of black rain was not as simple as it seemed. Even if the other party was a cultivator of the netherworld realm, he would still be on tenterhooks. Betrayers. The huge Azura King, celestial body, opened its mouth and uttered the word kill 4 times in a row. Every time it uttered the word, the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood around it would be destroyed a little bit, and its aura would become stronger. The first was a group of people that Lin Yuan did not recognize, but from their clothes, they seemed to be officials of Wanjian dynasty. Lin Yuan remembered when Jiujian Xian had just entered the fief. Corrupt officials ran amok, and all the people under his rule suffered. Thus, Jiujian Xian killed people in anger, and almost all the officials in his fief were killed. The second group of people who were destroyed were also dressed in the popular style of Wanjian dynasty, but they were not as noble as the first group of people. However, they were still dressed in extraordinary clothes, and there were men and women, old and young. Undoubtedly, be it Wanjian dynasty or Xinwu dynasty, other than the officials in the imperial court who needed some real talent, the officials who were sent to various places were basically the relatives or disciples of the big shots in the imperial court. After all, the northern frontier relied on real talent, while the other dynasties mostly relied on recommendations. Even if they were incompetent, they could have a good future if they had a good family background. Therefore, the second group of people should be the wealthy families in Zhou Jianxian's fief. Because the corrupt officials were killed, they secretly planned to deal with Zhou Jianxian. In the end, they were defeated by him and became a stepping stone for Zhou Jianxian to take over. The third group of people who were destroyed were also more than half of Wanjian dynasty. There were men and women, old and young, but their clothes were not uniform. Some were dressed luxuriously, and some were dressed shabbily. They should be the people who were not willing to contribute when Xinwu dynasty attacked Zhou Jianxian and were killed by Zhou Jianxian as a sacrifice. Everyone knew that the merciful could not command soldiers. No matter how good the reputation of a general was, they would not be merciful at the critical moment. The fourth group of people who were destroyed were dressed in completely different clothes, which was obviously the standard equipment of Xinwu dynasty. They were undoubtedly the soldiers who attacked Zhou Jianxian's fief and died under his sword. There were also some people dressed as officials of Xinwu dynasty, who should be the remaining members of the Zhou family who had been active in assassinating people in Xinwu dynasty these years. When these people were destroyed, Zhou Jianxian slowly raised his head, looked straight at Lin Yuan, and said in a deep voice, "Those who humiliate me should be killed." Just then, a virtual image that looked exactly like Lin Yuan appeared in front of Zhou Jianxian. Zhou Jianxian was not stunned, and the bone sword in his right hand suddenly chopped down, directly splitting Lin Yuan's virtual image into two. "Are you threatening me?" Lin Yuan laughed involuntarily. However, in an instant, Lin Yuan's smile froze on his face. Golden blood oozed out from the wound on his waist and dripped down. Like a meteorite, it smashed a deep pit on the ground and raised a large amount of dust and smoke. With the dust and smoke, Lin Yuan's eyes gradually became gloomy. Cutting off the virtual image could cause the same injury on his body. No, it was not the same. That virtual image was cut in half at the waist, but there was only a sword wound on his waist. Fortunately, although the injuries were the same, there was no Azura devil chi. Your methods are not bad. Then, it's time for me to get serious. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and the nether realm black water no longer continued to fall. Instead, it solidified into a black ice dragon that opened its mouth and roared. It swayed its body like a living creature and flew toward the wine sword mystery. Zhou Jianxian's 1,000 eyes blinked, and the bone sword in his hand chopped out again, directly facing the flying black ice dragon. He did not intend to dodge at all. Chapter 1031. When the bone sword and the ice dragon collided, there was no loud sound, and there was no fluctuation of Azura Chi and Nether River Death Chi. Because the moment the two collided, the huge ice dragon quickly melted, turning into soft and invisible Nether Realm black water. Wine Sword Xuanqian's eyes were filled with shock, because the moment the bone sword entered the Nether Realm black water, he felt that the bone sword in his right hand had lost connection with him. It was as if someone had cut it in half, but he didn't feel any pain. As time passed, more and more of the bone sword entered the Nether Realm black water. No matter how hard Wine Sword Xian tried, he could not pull out his right hand. His heart sank, but his actions were not slow. His left hand also turned into a bone sword and directly cut off his right hand. Looking at his right hand that entered the Nether Realm black water, Wine Sword Xian's head gradually secreted a layer of blood beads of sweat. Too terrifying. Even without the process of fighting, one of his arms was cut off. This was not the end. The pool of Nether Realm black water was like a hungry beast. Although it had eaten some blood food, it still could not suppress its greedy appetite. It once again surged towards Wine Sword Shin's body. The ice dragon lost its initial majesty, but became inexplicably treacherous. Wine Sword Shin retreated rapidly. His speed was extremely fast. The speed of the Nether Realm Blackwater was so fast that ordinary Heaven Dipper Realm experts couldn't react to it. However, it still only wrapped around the afterimage of Wine Sword Shin's body. Run? Where can you run to? Lin Yuan looked mockingly at Wine Sword Shin, who was retreating. This world was separated by Yang Mei's willow branch. Unless Wine Sword Shin was also in the origin Daluo realm, it was impossible to leave this world. Run? Where can you run to? After the Nether Realm's black water was converted in large amounts, it became a catastrophe that could swallow anything. Not to mention a small world like the Tianwu world. Even if it was placed in a middle world, it was enough to be called a world-destroying disaster. Just like in the legends, when Yu the Great controlled the flood, just the flood and the water demons almost destroyed the human world. He was forced to use the living soil of the ninth heaven, and with the help of Ing Long and the other big shots, he managed to control the flood. Not to mention the Nether Realm's black water, which was even more ferocious, and the Nether River's creatures, which were difficult to kill with ordinary means. Even a greater thousand world like the primitive world would have a headache for a while. Of course, compared to the wrath of nature, a man-made apocalypse was much easier to deal with. For example, if Lin Yuan went to the primeval world to release the Nether Realm Black Water, he would probably be killed by Hong Jun and the other big shots before the apocalypse reached a large scale. Seeing the Nether Realm Black Water chasing after the Wine Sword mystery, Lin Yuan once again emptied his mind. It is a good habit to go all out in a battle, but people who really have combat experience know that sometimes subconscious actions are countless times better than the actions made after careful thinking and deduction. The same is true for battles between cultivators. Instead of controlling the Nether Realm Black Water to predict the landing point of the Wine Sword mystery, Lin Yuan might as well let the Nether Realm Black Water hunt by itself. In addition to fighting, most cultivators are also pursuing the state of selflessness and selflessness. No matter what the situation is, as long as they are not interrupted, there will always be gains when they come back to their senses. Sometimes, deliberate actions could not be compared to fate. What's more, he didn't really want to kill Jiao Jinxian. After all, there was only one natural Azura. If he accidentally killed Jiao Jinxian, Lin Yuan would really have no place to cry. He couldn't set off a war between the 7 dynasties in the future and artificially create a group of Azuras, right? The Wine Sword mystery kept roaring and slashing with the bone sword in his hand, sweeping away the puddles of Nether Realm Black Water. However, when he came into contact with the Nether Realm Black Water, he had no choice but to cut off his flesh. Although he was only in his Dharma form and did not cut off his real flesh, every slash was really destroying his own cultivation. His Dharma form of a few hundred feet was now less than 100 feet. He was originally at the peak of the Heaven Dipper realm and was only a step away from it. However, Kong Ming's cultivation had also dropped to the early stage of the Heaven Dipper realm. If this continued, he might not even be able to maintain his Heaven Dipper realm cultivation. If that was all, it would be fine. After all, he was an Azura. If he could escape, he could quickly make up for it by killing in the future. However, the problem was that this world was isolated. Even if he had a lot of means, he would not be able to leave this world. Senior, stop. I am willing to surrender. Senior, please withdraw your supernatural power. The Wine Sword mystery tried his best to dodge the Nether Realm Blackwater while complaining incessantly. Everything had its vanquisher. Those immortals who troubled the northern frontier were just supplements to increase cultivation in the eyes of Azura. However, he could not get close to Lin Yuan at all. He could only slash Lin Yuan once with his supernatural power. Not to mention killing Lin Yuan, it was estimated that he could not even be regarded as a minor injury. If it were not for the fact that they were still fighting, Lin Yuan could easily heal him with his demon power. On the contrary, he could not fight back under Lin Yuan's supernatural power. What is called a sword? Rather break than bend? Don't you know that there is a kind of sword in this world called a soft sword? You are quite stubborn. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly, and his mind turned. He immediately took the underworld realm's black water back into his body. His gaze fell on the wine sword mystery. After pondering for a moment, he said, "This king will not deceive you. This world is about to be completed. At that time, in addition to the human world, the heavenly court and the underworld will be established. The 6 paths of reincarnation will be established in the netherworld. Each path master of the 6 paths will be able to obtain the position of Tao Sage. You are a natural Azura, and you were born at this time, so the position of Azura Path Master should be yours." The wine sword mystery hesitated for a moment, but did not rush over. Instead, he asked weakly, "Senior, may I ask, Senior, what is a saint of Tao?" Saints were a term used in the untainted world. It was hard to say what they were called in other boundless worlds. They entrusted everything to the 3 paths of heaven, earth, and man, and replaced the 3 paths of world will to patrol the world. However, there were similar existences in all boundless worlds. However, in a small world like the Sky Martial World, saint was indeed an extremely unfamiliar term. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and said calmly, "You can understand it as the transcendent realm. As long as you are in this world, under the premise of not disobeying the world will, saint is the strongest realm. There is no past, no future, only the present. It is immortal and has the same lifespan as the world. With a thought, it can change the past and future and reverse karma. The strongest realm, immortal, has the same lifespan as the world." The wine sword mystery's face suddenly became strange, and his expression became more hesitant. It seemed that he did not quite believe Lin Yuan's words. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.